Chapter 2701, Madness. The howl was extremely ear-piercing in the quiet surroundings, as everyone had been using communication techniques to talk. It rivaled a clap of thunder. What? What is happening? Have we been flanked by life-devouring beasts from behind? At that moment, the hearts of the several dozen prodigies in the cave tightened. First, the numerous life-devouring beasts had vanished from here for some reason. This unexplainable, strange sight made them uneasy, and now that there was a sudden howl, they became even more on edge. They were extremely nervous. Most of the latter half of the group fell into disorder following the howl. Pulses of energy appeared as the sounds of battle followed. Jin Hong's face changed. As a blur, he immediately vanished, flying towards the back as quickly as he could. The other prodigies followed behind him after a moment of hesitation. Jin Hong arrived at the location of the disorder in the group. He just happened to see dark, green light appear in the eyes of several sacrificial soldiers as they gave off a chaotic and brutal presence. They attacked the people around them madly. Jia Yunlong, have you lost your mind? Why have you suddenly attacked me? Lu Qingshui, what are you doing? We're good brothers who have been through thick and thin. Why have you suddenly turned against me, old Zhou? What has happened to you? Why don't you stop? Haven't you forgotten what your status is? You'll be sentenced to death by the young master if you continue like this. Over 20 cultivators who also happened to be sacrificial soldiers were caught off guard and were heavily injured by the sudden attacks. They all stared at their companions in disbelief as they bellowed out furiously and in confusion. The sacrificial soldiers with shining green eyes did not seem to hear them. They produced beast-like roars as they attacked the surrounding cultivators with all their might. On a nearby tree, Jin Hong frowned as he saw this. The light in his eyes flickered as he seemed to be in thought. The other leaders of the organizations all arrived as well. They either stood on trees or hovered in the air, staring at the disorderly sacrificial soldiers in surprise. One of them is from my Chu family. What has happened to him? Chu Yun hovered in the air and looked at the sacrificial soldier from his clan who currently attacked everyone with no regard. Chu Yun's face became rather ugly. Capture these people making trouble, Baijian Xiong of the 100 Battle Clan called out coldly, immediately issuing a command. Immediately, all the sacrificial soldiers of the 100 Battle Clan took action. Together, they suppressed the insane sacrificial soldiers very quickly. However, even though the sacrificial soldiers had been immobilized, they showed no intention of settling down. The inky green light in their eyes grew deeper in color as they struggled desperately. As the light shone brighter, they put up an even greater and greater struggle. It was to a level where it was greater than the strength that they were supposed to possess. We're struggling to keep these people down. Quick, send a few more people. One of the sacrificial soldiers holding the people down called out, and a few sacrificial soldiers joined in immediately. In the end, it took 8 sacrificial soldiers to hold down a single person. This was shocking, as these sacrificial soldiers had all been nurtured using 100 Tribulations God King pills. Their strength would all be roughly the same. Normally, just 2 or 3 people would be enough to hold a single person down. However, they required a total of 8 now. This meant that the sacrificial soldiers who had lost their minds were 2 or 3 times more powerful than before. How is this possible? Why have they become like this? Chu Jia was at a loss. He was completely confused. No one answered his question. In reality, many people were confused as to just what had happened here. Jin Hong stared at the shining, green eyes of the sacrificial soldiers, and he gradually became stern. Afterward, he seemed to decide on something, and his expression changed abruptly. He immediately called out, "Quick, everyone cloak yourselves with energy and avoid the mist." What? All of this was caused by the mist here? But how is that possible? How is that possible? Isn't this just ordinary mist? How can it have such a strange power? Jin Hong's call shocked all of the prodigies present. They all stared at the mist in disbelief. They were in doubt and suspicion. Even though some of them were still doubtful, all of them immediately cloaked themselves with energy, forcing the mist away from their bodies. The sacrificial soldiers obeyed as well. Immediately, colorful energy erupted from their bodies. The shining energy dyed the surrounding landscape with a variety of colors. However, it was all too late, as around half of the group had believed that Jian Chen was just trying to frighten them with his warnings. They had ignored his recommendation, so they had absorbed a large quantity of mist in the past few days. Now, the issue with the mist had finally erupted completely. Just 5 seconds after Jin Hong's command, more cultivators began to lose their minds among the sacrificial soldiers. They seemed to descend into madness. Dark green light shone in their eyes as they attacked their nearby companions wildly. Like a chain reaction, more and more sacrificial soldiers descended into madness. In that short moment, the total amount increased from a few to several dozen, and then several hundred, followed by several thousand before increasing to over 10,000. In the end, everyone among the sacrificial soldiers who had not cloaked themselves with energy descended into madness. None of them were able to avoid this fate. Immediately, a great battle erupted in the mountains. The insane sacrificial soldiers were no longer able to tell friend from foe, attacking the normal sacrificial soldiers, forcing them to fend for their lives. The group that stretched into the tens of thousands fell into disorder in that moment. They were collapsing from within. Why? Why? Many of the prodigies were stunned by this scene. They were in complete shock and disbelief. Wake up. Awu. Jin Hong was pale. He immediately transformed into a golden wolf that was 3 meters long, and the blurry figure of the ancient sky wolf appeared behind him. He then let out a deafening wolf's howl that spread far and wide. He attacked to wake up all the sacrificial soldiers that had lost their minds. But it was useless. He Qianqian was pale as well. Even though all the sacrificial soldiers of the Heavenly Crane clan had followed Jian Chen's recommendation, so none of them had lost their minds, this young lady of a peak clan was still rather frightened by what was happening. She saw the sacrificial soldiers of the Heavenly Crane clan fend off the attacks of the insane cultivators and immediately ordered, "People of the Heavenly Crane clan, use the divine formation of the crane's feather immediately." Chapter 2702, The Reign of the Two World Mountains. The divine formation of the crane's feather was a powerful, defensive formation. It could not be used against life-devouring beasts, but it was basically an impenetrable wall against the attacks of cultivators. If several hundred or 1,000 sacrificial soldiers used the formation, they would be combining all of their strength. They could even stop the attacks of a few experts who had just reached infinite prime. People of the Empire Lotus Sword sect, use the Lotus Sword formation immediately. People of the 100 Battle Clan, use the Invincible formation quickly. People of the Sun family, people of the Greenfields clan. Afterwards, the other prodigies all snapped to their senses as well, passing down commands together. Immediately, many powerful defensive formations were quickly erected to block the attacks of the insane cultivators. The attacks of the crazy cultivators finally posed no more threat to the regular sacrificial soldiers. However, in that short amount of time, close to 1,000 sacrificial soldiers had passed away. We're done for. It's over for us. It's all over. Chu Jia and the others were grief-stricken. Blood had drained from their faces completely. Not only had all of their subordinates lost their minds, they themselves had absorbed quite a lot of the gray mist as well. Even though they were unable to find anything wrong with their bodies for now, the fates of the sacrificial soldiers had cast a shadow in their hearts. None of them know when they would become like the insane sacrificial soldiers. Some of the prodigies had already begun wolfing down various pills in an attempt to disperse the mist within them. Having witnessed the sacrificial soldiers descend into madness, they had truly become afraid. They were in fear. What hurt them even more was that the prodigies who had not absorbed any mist due to their energy cloaking had instinctively moved away from them, secretly raising their guard against them. Clearly, they were prepared for their descension into insanity at any time. Even their good friends that they had referred to as brothers before had purposefully backed away from them, afraid of standing too close. "Dandan, don't worry, nothing will happen to me. I possess a large quantity of pills. The puny mist can't do anything to me," said one of the prodigies to a woman beside him with a pale face. "Shao Qi, keep your distance. Don't come near me. A young lady by the name of Dandan screamed and immediately backed away from him, avoiding him like the plague. Xiao Qi's heart ached. Deep regret filled him. Damn it. If I had known earlier, would have chosen to believe Yang Yutian before. I've actually forced myself into a state like this just to save a bit of energy. Damn it, damn it. Xiao Qi felt utter regret. Young Master Jin Hong, what do we do now? What should we do with these sacrificial soldiers who've lost control? The prodigy of the Man family, Man Yunjun, asked sternly. She was a lady who seemed around 20 years of age. She was good-looking and gave off a valiant aura, rather like a person of strong moral character. She was much more outstanding than most of the prodigies present. She was one of the few prodigies who managed to stay composed in the face of this sudden incident. Jin Hong said nothing, as he himself had no idea how to handle this situation. He felt like he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He had already tried to wake up these insane sacrificial soldiers, but it was impossible. If they tried to suppress them with force, they would clearly need to pay an extravagant price. As a matter of fact, they might not even succeed in doing so. However, if they were supposed to kill all of them, it similarly would be a huge loss and a great hit to their forces. They would not be able to deal with the unknown dangers in 100 Saint City. We can't leave either, seeing how we're pinned down like this. This can't continue. We have to come up with a way to deal with all of this, Ping Yixing of the Empire Lotus Sword Sect said grimly. Our sacrificial soldiers will run out of energy sooner or later, and we still have to deal with the threat of life-devouring beasts in our remaining journey. We can't waste too much energy here, said Lu Yi of the Greenfields clan. It has already come to this point. We're out of options. Let's kill all the sacrificial soldiers who have lost control, said the prodigy of the Darkness clan. He was shrouded in black robes, obscuring his face and giving off a sense of mysteriousness. He was a quiet person. He maintained an extremely low profile in the group and rarely spoke. However, no one underestimated him, as he was the king of the night. He might not have been the strongest in open battle, but in terms of assassination, he could send chills down the spines of all cultivators at the same level as him. That's a good idea. We need to take action immediately. We've created too great of a disturbance here. If we draw over life-devouring beasts, we'll really be in trouble. If we don't handle it well, all of us will die here, someone added immediately. No, we can't kill them. Our clans have painstakingly raised these sacrificial soldiers. We can't let them die by our own hands. You all understand just how valuable 100 Tribulations God King pills are. If you touch them, the clans behind us will never just turn a blind eye to the whole thing once we leave the world of the fallen beast. They'll definitely demand an explanation, Gong Ruiz said shrilly. He objected immediately. He was extremely nervous. At that moment, everyone was faced with a tough dilemma. They were stuck with over 10,000 insane sacrificial soldiers, unable to leave. 100 kilometers away, a huge eagle circled in the air. On its wide back sat Jian Chen. He also frowned. He murmured to himself, the mist can actually control the minds of god kings. It's even more complicated than I imagined it to be. Jian Chen reached out with one hand, and the space before him warped. Swathes of mist was sucked into his hand, condensing into a thumb-sized bead in the end. He stared at the bead for a long time before even using the senses of his soul. He examined it closely, inspecting every inch of it in an attempt to find the secret hidden in the mist. However, the secret hidden in the mist could not be unraveled so easily. Even with Jian Chen's soul that had mutated after absorbing a strand of chaotic force, he found almost nothing after a close inspection. He did not find any leads to nullifying the mist either. 2 hours later, Jian Chen opened his eyes, and the white bead in his hand transformed back into mist, dispersing in the surroundings. It seems like the cultivators who have lost control are basically hopeless. Jian Chen shook his head and sighed. He had used the senses of his soul to secretly inspect the souls of the insane sacrificial soldiers in the past, which was why he understood just how troublesome the mist was. At the very least, there was nothing he could do to save the sacrificial soldiers with his current abilities. At this moment, a drizzle suddenly descended from the sky, enveloping a range of 100 kilometers. No one paid attention to the rain. They all thought it was just regular rain. Jin Hong and the other prodigies were cloaked in energy as well, so the rain directly bounced off them. They did not even get wet. However, the insane sacrificial soldiers were completely drenched. What no one noticed was that when the rain came into contact with their skin, it actually merged with their bodies quietly, turning into a stream of coolness that fused with their blood, meridians, flesh, and soul. The stream of coolness seemed to be able to purify certain things in the world. Wherever it passed by, the gray mist in the bodies of the sacrificial soldiers would begin to disperse. In just a few seconds, the cultivators who had attacked the defensive formations mindless gradually slowed down. Their movements became duller and duller before actually stopping. The green light in their eyes began to fade, allowing their pupils to recover their normal light. Nearby, the prodigies had just been discussing whether they would kill the mindless sacrificial soldiers or not. They also discovered the strange phenomenon here, so they all looked over, and with that, many of them beamed with joy. Look, they've actually woken up, and the light in their eyes have returned to normal. Fantastic, they've finally come to their senses. Chu Jie could not help but cry out as he began to dance in celebration. He was in high spirits. Not only did the recovery of these people indicate that there was a way to deal with the mist, it also meant that the sacrificial soldiers had returned to their control. There was no need for them to lose their subordinates. It's the rain that saved them. The rain can actually subdue the mist. Jin Hong looked at the drizzling sky in surprise. Chapter 2703, A mysterious person. Chu Jie, Kong Feiying, Zhao Wenbin, and the other prodigies who had absorbed a large quantity of the mist all became excited. The gloom on their faces was completely swept away, and they howled out in utter joy as if they had been given a second life. They began to gulp down the rain greedily. What did I do just then? I actually attacked my own people. How did I end up doing something like that? The sacrificial soldiers who had returned to their senses were at a loss. They looked at the blood on their hands and recalled everything that they had done earlier. Their faces immediately paled. They were only sacrificial soldiers raised by the clans. They knew the rules of the clans extremely well, so they understood the severity of their earlier crimes. They knew how heavy the consequences would be. Not only would they be destined for death, but even their family and clans would face destruction. Young master, spare me, spare me. I had lost my mind earlier. I had no idea what I was doing at all. Have mercy, young master. I had no choice either. I had completely lost control of myself. The sacrificial soldiers all began to beg and plead. They were not afraid of death because they could only live for another century at most. It was mostly because of the people they were attached to. Some of them had families, wives, or clans. They had only committed themselves to such a reluctant cause because of their circumstances, selling themselves to the peak clans. They trapped themselves in slavery and were raised by the clans as sacrificial soldiers with 100 tribulations God King pills. Jin Hong glanced past these sacrificial soldiers and hesitated slightly before telling the prodigies, since they've all recovered, reorganize your groups quickly. We can't stay here. We have to leave as soon as possible. That's right, that's right. Even if there are major matters that we need to attend to, we should put them aside and leave here first. The disturbance earlier was so great that it must have alarmed life-devouring beasts in the distance. There might be a great swarm of them hurrying over here right now. We need to go as quickly as possible. Everyone's hearts tightened when that was mentioned. The prodigies said nothing more and immediately reorganized their groups before hurrying off. However, after the lesson this time, no one dared to save energy anymore. They all cloaked themselves in energy to avoid the mist. 100 kilometers away, Jian Shen stood up on the back of the eagle. He extended his hand towards the direction of the distant group. With that, space immediately distorted and droplets of rain 100 kilometers away were retrieved using the laws of space, condensing into a thumb-sized bead of water that hovered above his hand. Jian Chen's eyes shone as his eyes became piercing. It seemed like he wanted to see through the droplet of water and learn the secrets that it was hiding. However, he found nothing out of the ordinary. It was just normal rainwater. Jian Chen would have never believed that this rainwater could help the sacrificial soldiers recover. According to his understanding, ordinary rain could do nothing to the mist. No, it's not because of the rain, a thought flashed through Jian Chen's head. He could clearly sense that the rainwater he had gathered just now was slightly different from the rain that had helped the sacrificial soldiers return to their senses. They seemed to be two different substances. Jian Chen extended his hand again. In order to get to the bottom of this, he could not care too much. He planned on retrieving the rainwater directly from the sacrificial soldiers. Jian Chen suddenly began to fade. He became transparent, and his figure grew fainter and fainter. In just 5 seconds, he had vanished completely. When he vanished, the eagle beneath him glanced backwards. There was some confusion within its dull eyes because it could sense that Jian Chen was still standing on it, except it could no longer see him. Jian Chen had used the laws of space to meld into the space there. Afterwards, he arrived before a sacrificial soldier 100 kilometers away. He gently brushed the sacrificial soldier's shoulders with his hidden hand, and the rainwater on him immediately vanished, ending up with Jian Chen. However, the moment the rainwater entered Jian Chen's hands, he frowned. After his soul had fused with a strand of true chaotic force, it was no longer the same as before. His senses were exceptionally sharp, allowing him to sense things that even experts stronger than him could not discover. He could clearly tell that the rainwater had undergone a slight change right before it ended up in his hands. It felt like something within the rainwater had suddenly vanished. Just as I had suspected. The thing that made these people recover isn't the rain but something within the rain. The rain is probably just a cover, Jian Chen thought. This discovery shocked him. He could not help but wonder whether the rain had fallen naturally or if someone was behind it all. However, what he did not understand was that if the rain was natural, why would there be such a coincidence? Why did the wondrous substance in the rain suddenly vanish when he wanted to inspect the rain? Moreover, why did it have to use the rain as a cover? However, if this were all man-made, just who would possess the ability to fool his sense in the world of the fallen beast that only allowed those below 1,000 years of age to enter? If it were someone from the Dark Star race, the strongest would only be the Dark Star Emperor. Although he might not be the Dark Star Emperor's opponent if they began fighting, Jian Chen was confident that the Dark Star Emperor would not be able to hide anything from him. At that moment, Jian Chen remained standing where he was, deep in thought. Ideas constantly flashed through his head, and his expression varied as well. Only when the group had long departed the area did he leave, returning to the eagle. After Jian Chen left, an illusionary figure suddenly appeared in the nearby forest. The figure was condensed from the power of the soul. It was only possible to roughly make out the outline of a man. He was slender, but his face was all a blur. The illusionary man hovered in the air and looked in Jian Chen's direction. He seemed to be able to see the figure that had returned to the back of the eagle 100 kilometers away. Jian Chen, this saint has heard about you many times from Heartless. Now that I've seen you, you really might have some exceptional areas. After all, you're able to sense what's up with the rain. However, so what if you can do that? How would a mere infinite prime like you see through my methods when I personally take action? The illusionary man murmured to himself as he stared at Jian Chen. There was admiration in his tone but scorn as well. He seemed to be scornful towards infinite primes, completely looking down on them. As for Jian Chen, he failed to sense anything the entire time. Even when he constantly enveloped the surrounding region with the senses of his soul, even when the illusionary man stood in that range, Jian Chen failed to discover him at all. Afterwards, the illusionary man gazed in the direction of Jin Hong's group again and murmured, "You may be weak, unable to create a single wave in the saints' world, but you have enough strength to be treated with precaution by the Dark Star race. The formations composed of the sacrificial soldiers can even unleash the strength of first or second heavenly layer infinite primes. It's enough to create a storm among the Dark Star race. The great ceremony of the Dark Star race is about to begin. The ceremony cannot succeed. If it were just Jian Shen, I would still be a little worried, but with you, there'll be an even greater chance at disrupting the ceremony. Chapter 2704, A Primordial Realm Life-Devouring Beast. The man's figure slowly faded away. It was as if he had become a part of the world again. His methods were so strange that no one could sense his existence. 100 kilometers away, the huge eagle circled around at a low altitude. It would sweep past the canopy of trees from time to time and bring about a great gust of wind, stripping leaves from the trees and causing them to be blown about in the air. As a matter of fact, some of the smaller trees were directly uprooted, swept into the air. The vague pressure that belonged to a beast king radiated from the eagle, causing some life-devouring beasts hidden in the forest to flee. Weaker life-devouring beasts lacked self-consciousness and a sense of fear or dread, which was why cultivators could not deter them from attacking. However, the Beast King's presence from the eagle invoked a sense of fear that was embedded in their very bloodline. As a result, wherever the eagle flew by, a mess would occur in the forests below. Many life-devouring beasts would flee into the distance to get away from the eagle. Jian Shen sat on the eagle's back quietly as he continued to ponder. Due to the uniqueness of his soul, he had managed to find something off about the rain. Even though he was unable to confirm anything, he had already begun to suspect that the rain was not natural. Rather, it was likely caused by someone. The rain had been contaminated by some strange substance as well, which could nullify the side effects of the mist. As a result, the sacrificial soldiers recovered. Most importantly, whenever Jian Shen tried to collect the substance in the rain, it would suddenly vanish. Hence, the rain would be reduced to normal rainwater in his hands. Jian Shen refused to believe that the substance was self-conscious and had automatically avoided him. Since that was the case, only one possibility remained: an expert who was far more powerful than Jian Shen was secretly controlling everything. Such a matter would have been nothing surprising if this had happened in the outside world, but this was the world of the fallen beast, a place filled with the supreme will of the grand exalts of the wood spirits and the dark star race. Only outsiders below the age of 1,000 years could enter. Meanwhile, the people of the Darkstar race were suppressed by the supreme will of the Grand Exalt from the Wood Spirits, preventing them from breaking through to Chaotic Prime. The 9th heavenly layer of Infinite Prime was the maximum cultivation they could possess in the world of the fallen beast. In such a special miniature world, how was it possible for an expert who could fool his senses to exist? This was a question Jian Shen could not answer. As a result, he was doubtful and very confused at the same time. He refused to believe that a supreme expert who could fool everybody and sneak in here against the wills of the two grand exalts existed. As his understanding of the world of the fallen beast increased, he gained the impression that let alone grand primes, but even sovereigns of the world who had basically become part of the laws of the world would have to endure the wills of the two grand exalts if they wanted to enter here. Even exceptional people on the same level as the two grand exalts would have to face this, let alone people below grand exalt. Whatever, let's not think about this for now. I need to get out of here as quickly as possible. After that, I need to find a way to save Sacred Feather. Jian Shen exhaled deeply and cleared his head. Roar. Suddenly, the tremendous roar of a beast rang out with the might of a beast king. A huge, three-eyed tiger stood proudly on a large rock up ahead, staring at the incoming eagle with hostility. This was another late god king life-devouring beast king. The region here clearly belonged to it. Under Jian Shen's control, the eagle had already intruded upon its territory. The eagle froze up slightly when it saw the tiger, and it could not help but slow down. Deep fear filled its dull eyes. What are you afraid of? Fly over there. Jian Shen slapped the back of the eagle and surging energy appeared, enveloping the entire eagle. Afterwards, the eagle flew towards the tiger helplessly. Jian Shen constantly paid attention to the group behind him. They traveled in a straight path. This was a place where the group had to pass by, so he needed to clear the obstacles in their way so that they could make it out of the two world mountains as soon as possible. As if it had been provoked, the tiger fell into a rage. It let out a deafening roar that reverberated outwards as sound waves, disintegrating all the vegetation within a range of 10 kilometers. Even the rocks that formed the ground cracked. Jianshen waved his hand, and the space behind him immediately twisted. He had already cast down a spatial barrier in the surroundings to prevent the roar from making it out. Otherwise, the group would definitely hear the tiger's roar. Once they knew there was a life-devouring beast king up ahead, they would surely change directions and waste even more time. At this moment, the third eye on the tiger's forehead suddenly opened. A beam of green light shot over with unbelievable speed. The eagle shuddered violently. It seemed to be familiar with the tiger's third eye. As the green beam shot over, it instinctively tried to turn around and flee. It actually carries the power of the laws of curses. Jianshen was surprised before suddenly focusing on the incoming beam of light. When he gazed over, the beam of light suddenly froze in the air. No, calling it frozen would be wrong. The beam of light continued onwards, except it moved at a snail-like pace. It was so slow that it seemed like it had halted. This life-devouring beast king is quite powerful, especially that beam of light with the laws of curses. The attack is powerful enough to threaten most supreme prodigies on the God King's throne. No wonder the eagle wanted to flee as soon as it saw it. It seems like the eagle has suffered because of this tiger before, Jianshen murmured to himself before gently pointing at the tiger. He called out, "Destroy." With that, the beam of light suddenly collapsed. Subsequently, the tiger itself exploded. At this moment, Jianshen suddenly frowned and suddenly looked at where the tiger had died. A shadow suddenly rose up from there before gradually condensing into the figure of a huge beast. The beast was also a three-eyed tiger, except it was much larger, like a mountain. Its presence was earth-shaking as well, hundreds of times stronger than the life-devouring beast king. It stared straight at Jianshen like it wanted to burn Jianshen's presence into its brain. A primordial realm life-devouring beast. I never thought the life-devouring beast king I just killed had backing. Jianshen sat on the eagle's back and looked at the huge figure calmly. However, the eagle below him had already begun to tremble in fear. Its wings had stopped working. If it were not for the fact that it was under Jianshen's control, it probably would have fallen down already. "I will come for you." "Disperse," Jianshen looked at the large figure and said calmly. Afterwards, he waved his hand gently, and the figure suddenly collapsed. Chapter 2705, A Clash Between the Powerful. 1. The tremendous figure was not the primordial realm life-devouring beast. Rather, it was something similar to a strand of its soul. As a result, Jianshen could easily disperse it. With Jianshen's current strength, very few infinite primes could pose a threat to him. With the life-devouring beast's strength, it would struggle to oppose Jianshen even if it were personally present, so let alone a strand of its soul. Right after Jianshen dispersed the figure, an earth-shaking roar suddenly rang out in a dense forest beyond the range of Jianshen's senses. The terrifying roar shook up the surrounding mountains, causing the ground to crack. It spread out as sound waves, destroying all life within a range of 100 kilometers. Within a cave reinforced by special energy, a huge, shadowy figure flashed and appeared outside. It was an extremely large gray tiger that was a total of 100 meters in length. It also had a third eye at the center of its forehead. The eye was tightly closed such that it only seemed like a slit. The tiger seemed exactly the same as the one Jianshen had just slain, the only difference was its size and strength. With a single movement, terrifying energy erupted from the tiger's body, and the surroundings boomed. Several mountains collapsed from the energy. Its eyes were filled with fury and hatred as it glared in Jianshen's direction. Even though it was millions of kilometers away, it still seemed to be able to lock onto Jianshen's presence with flawless precision. Afterwards, it leapt, resulting in an explosion in the air. The entire space there shuddered and twisted. The infinite prime tiger seemed to smash through space, having vanished already as it traveled towards Jianshen with speed that did not belong to an infinite prime. It was so fast that it did not take too long to cover the millions of kilometers between them. In just a few seconds, the tiger's tremendous presence appeared within the range of Jianshen's senses. It basically crossed tens of thousand kilometers at every moment. "I was just about to go look for you, but you've actually come to me instead," Jian Chen murmured to himself when he sensed the tiger's movements. He was completely calm, glancing at the group 100 kilometers away before controlling the eagle to fly towards the tiger without any hesitation at all. He needed to stop the primordial realm life-devouring beast a certain distance from the group. The eagle flapped its wings and flew as quickly as it could. The surrounding space constantly twisted as if it were being folded, allowing the eagle to cover ground over 100 times faster than normal. Elsewhere, the huge group composed of members of the various clans continued to make their way through the dense thicket quickly. All of them were on high alert, ready for any sudden attacks from life-devouring beasts. None of them, including Jin Hong, could sense the primordial realm life-devouring beast currently heading in their direction. This was a beast that was enough to cause them to pale. At the forefront of the group, He Qianqian stood with the other prodigies. She constantly took out the divine hall Jian Chen had handed her. She would check if the strand of soul remained in there so that she could confirm Jian Chen's status. When she sensed that the strand of Jian Chen's soul remained, she could not help but feel relieved. At the very least, she knew that Jian Chen was still alive. However, she soon thought of something and could not help but begin to worry. She thought to herself, we've already traveled for such a long time. We're nowhere near where we separated anymore. Yang Yutian, are you able to cross such a great distance and catch up to us? He Qianqian, is the strand of Yang Yutian's soul still there? Suddenly, Jin Hong looked back at He Qianqian and asked her. He Qianqian nodded and said nothing. Jin Hong saw that and could not help but smile. Just as I had suspected. Yang Yutian really isn't a person that could die so easily. I think he should be able to catch up to us easily with his laws of space. It's all because of Yang Yutian's sacrifice that we were able to escape this time. He had selflessly drawn away the life-devouring beast king, so he must be in great danger right now. If I can still see him again once we make it out of the Two World Mountains, I will definitely thank him properly, said the prodigy of the Empire Lotus Sword sect. Yang Yutian is a man of great character. In order to make enough time for us, he had gone as far as to sacrifice himself and face the late God King life-devouring beast king alone. That alone has filled me with admiration towards him. I must definitely treasure a friend like this, added the prodigy of the Scarlet Light clan, Guang Wanhua. He felt admiration from the bottom of his heart. Many of them were touched by Jian Chen's actions. They all felt that he was the reason why they could escape and that they owed him a huge favor. They were grateful towards him. Of course, not everyone was like that. A few people remained indifferent. From the bottom of their hearts, they looked down on Jian Chen because of his status as an independent cultivator. They all believed that they were superior and matters that involved risk and potential death were supposed to be done by independent cultivators or servants. I think that you're all overestimating Yang Yutian. With his laws of space, he can avoid the life-devouring beast king temporarily, but don't forget that using the power of laws will consume one's power of the soul. Unlike origin energy, power of the soul can't be recovered by absorbing divine crystals. Once the power of his soul is completely depleted, it will probably be his end. Gong Rui's was disgruntled by everyone's praise of Jian Chen because he held resentment towards the latter, so he added coldly. That's right. In my opinion, even if Yang Yutian is still alive, he probably has a foot planted in the grave. He's probably running around the Two World Mountains like a dog. Let alone seeing him in the future, he'll probably have all of his life force sucked dry by a life-devouring beast just like the dead sacrificial soldiers soon, Chu Jia added venomously. Chu Jia, shut your mouth. The reason why we were able to escape from the life-devouring beast king was all because of Yang Yutian. He basically saved us. He Qianqian looked at Chu Jia furiously with a sunken face. He saved us all? Do you think he has that ability? Chu Jia was scornful. At this moment, a tiger's roar rang out from the horizon. Coupled with it were pulses of energy and pressure from who knows how far away. Even though the energy and pressure had become extremely faint after traveling such a great distance, all of the prodigies present were knowledgeable, so they immediately sensed an energy that was beyond godhood cultivators from the pressure. The primordial realm. It's at the primordial realm. Oh no, the pressure comes from the primordial realm. Ping Yixing of the Empire Lotus Sword sect suddenly paled. He had come into contact with many primordial realm experts in his sect. He had an extremely deep impression of the unique presence and energy that primordial realm experts possessed. It's a life-devouring beast. That's the roar of a primordial realm life-devouring beast. There are primordial realm experts fighting in the distance. Immediately, everyone's expressions changed drastically, as they would not be able to put up any resistance against a primordial realm life-devouring beast. The formations of God King sacrificial soldiers would bring about no benefits at all. With the strength of primordial realm life-devouring beasts, their ability to devour life would be so powerful that even if they were several kilometers or several dozen kilometers away, their bodies would still be drained clean in an extremely short amount of time. With the appearance of the primordial realm life-devouring beast, everyone apart from Jin Hong became afraid. However, even Jin Hong became extremely stern. Chapter 2706, A Clash Between the Powerful. 2. By the looks of things, it's a battle between two primordial realm life-devouring beasts. If that's the case, we don't have to worry too much. That's right. Although the senses of primordial realm life-devouring beasts span an extremely wide range, they must devote all of their efforts to the battle since they've encountered an opponent at the same level. It won't be able to discover us from so far away. Some prodigies could tell that something was off from the weak pulses of energy, and they immediately calmed down significantly. This was because they had already determined that the primordial realm life-devouring beast in the distance was unable to pose any threat to them temporarily. They would not have to face off against it. In the intense battle between the two, one side will definitely suffer injuries. Perhaps, both of them will become heavily wounded. Should we go over and check on the situation there? We might be able to benefit unexpectedly. The remains of primordial realm life-devouring beasts are a priceless treasure, said a prodigy as his eyes shone with excitement and greed. When the others heard him, some of their faces immediately darkened. They stared at the person with displeasure. They would not even be able to escape from primordial realm life-devouring beasts, yet there was actually a person reckless enough to want to approach them. Were they tired of living? Of course, not everyone responded in the same manner. The eyes of a few prodigies lit up. They were ready to risk it. That's not a bad idea. Although the devouring abilities of primordial realm life-devouring beasts are extremely powerful, it's limited to a certain range. As long as we remain further away, they won't be able to do anything to us. Moreover, they've met an opponent their equal right now. They're focusing on the battle, so they will have minimal awareness of their surroundings. It'll make it even more difficult for them to discover us. Everyone, think about it. Just how precious are the remains of primordial realm life-devouring beasts? If you add a bit of their remains when refining high-quality god-tier pills, both their efficacy and quality will increase. Once god-tier pills reach high quality, they're already priceless. Hence, I think that all of you understand just how valuable they'll become with even the slightest improvement of efficacy. Risk comes with reward. Before us is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The prodigies who were tempted by the remains of primordial realm life-devouring beasts did their best to convince the group to go hunt down the primordial realm life-devouring beasts. The temptation of the remains was simply too great for them. Although it could not directly increase their strength, bringing back a portion of it would warrant merit so great that they might even be personally rewarded by the ancestor. Their status in the clan would rise accordingly. They were all prodigies from peak clans, but some of them did not possess particularly great status in their clans. They only had some status because one of their ancestors were a great elder. However, there were plenty of people in the younger generation with greater status. As a matter of fact, there were even a few that the ancestor had placed high hopes on. They were superior in both cultivation speed and battle prowess. However, they were older than 1,000 years, which had cost them this opportunity and allowed others to gain the chance to enter the world of the fallen beast to demonstrate themselves and contribute to the clan. As a result, some of them were unable to resist the temptation of the remains of primordial realm life-devouring beasts. There was a difference in substance that existed between the primordial realm and godhood. No matter how many remains of godhood life-devouring beasts they obtained, it would be nowhere near as valuable as a thumb-sized chunk of remains from the primordial realm. He Qianqian also hesitated. Clearly, she was rather tempted. The Heavenly Crane clan was in desperate need of primordial realm life-devouring beast remains. They did not need it for a high-quality god-tier pill. Rather, they required it for a supreme-quality pill that was even greater so that one of their important figures could ingest it. The Crane ancestor still hasn't recovered from his wounds. Ordinary supreme-quality god-tier pills aren't very effective. Only supreme-quality pills with primordial realm life-devouring beast remains might be of some use, as its effects will be amplified, thought He Qianqian. She understood that these life-devouring beasts were basically created by the grand exalt of the wood spirits. As a result, they contained small fragments of the grand exalt's laws. This was a form of life force. It would be extremely useful in pills, enough to breathe life into the old. Young Master Jin Hong, do you think we should risk it? He Qianqian looked at Jin Hong. She greatly desired some of the flesh, which could be refined into supreme-quality god-tier pills to help the Crane ancestor heal. Risk it? I'm certain that if we just try to approach that place, we'll be annihilated. He Qianqian, you seem rather level-headed normally, so why have you become muddle-headed now? Jin Hong snorted coldly. He glared at the interested people and said with a sunken voice, don't forget, life-devouring beasts aren't cultivators. We might be able to threaten infinite primes that are on the brink of death if we work together, but even if primordial realm life-devouring beasts are close to dying, they'll still be able to suck your life force dry from hundreds of kilometers away. If you want to go ahead, I can promise you that you'll be dead before you can even see the life-devouring beast. That's all I'll say. Make the decision for yourself. If you still want to try, I won't stop you. With that, Jin Hong left with a few people and a large number of sacrificial soldiers. Clearly, he was ready to perform a full retreat, wanting to pull away from the life-devouring beasts. He Qianqian looked in the direction of the disturbance reluctantly. She made up her mind and left with the group. As for the other prodigies who were tempted by the remains of primordial realm life-devouring beasts, their eagerness slowly subsided, and they also left reluctantly while filled with regrets. Several hundred kilometers away, Jian Chen and the primordial realm life-devouring beast met halfway. They did not try to communicate with each other. As soon as the life-devouring beast saw Jian Chen, it embroiled in a great battle with him as its eyes burned with hatred. Jian Chen stood in the air, and light flickered around him. He enveloped himself in the light from his laws of the sword such that he seemed like a ball of silver light from afar. His figure was vaguely visible. He hovered in the air, radiating with surging sword chi. He was able to rain sword chi towards the primordial realm life-devouring beast with the slightest movement. Everything in his hands became a sword. The attacks of the life-devouring beast were much simpler. It did not use any battle skills or secret techniques, nor did it understand how to use tricks. Its attacks were clearly rather clumsy. It used its claws and sharp teeth. Although that was the case, it was still of the primordial realm after all. Its body surged with energy. Even though its use of energy was not very skillful, its strength was extremely shocking every time it struck out. Moreover, it constantly gave off a strange suction. The strength of the suction force was shocking, and it especially devoured life force. Even some weaker infinite primes would not be able to keep their life force under control if they faced against it, resulting in it all draining away. This life-devouring beast is roughly at the third heavenly layer of infinite prime, but it'll take a fourth heavenly layer expert at the very least to defeat it. It'll probably be very difficult for anyone below the third heavenly layer to keep their life force under control, Jian Chen thought as he became rather stern. With his current cultivation level, he could vaguely sense that his life force was being drained away as he faced against the life-devouring beast. He could only keep it locked down when he poured all his efforts into defense, utilizing both chaotic force and his laws of the sword. His battle prowess completely exceeded the life-devouring beast. He had even killed 9th heavenly layer infinite primes in the past with the 9-star sword of heavenly ways. Now that he was without his sword, some of his strength was lost, but he was still an expert among infinite primes. However, battle prowess was not equivalent to levels of cultivation or comprehension. His cultivation was only roughly the same as the life-devouring beast before him. Chapter 2707, A Clash Between the Powerful. 3. As a result, the life-devouring beast's unique suction force affected Jian Chen to a certain degree. With my current level of cultivation, I can kill 6th heavenly layer infinite primes even without the 9-star sword of heavenly ways. However, if I come across a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime life-devouring beast, the one to suffer defeat will probably be me, thought Jian Chen. Prior to this, the strongest life-devouring beasts he had encountered was only Peak God King. To Jian Chen, who had comprehended the ultimate way of the sword, God Kings were no different from ants no matter how extraordinary they were. Once he used the will of the ultimate way of the sword, he could kill them in a split second. As a result, he had failed to properly recognize the strength of life-devouring beasts before. Only now when he faced a primordial realm life-devouring beast did he understand just how troublesome they were. A mere 3rd heavenly layer infinite prime life-devouring beast required him to use his full strength to keep his life force under control. If he fought a 4th or 5th heavenly layer infinite prime life-devouring beast instead, would he still be able to keep his life force from leaking away? Once he lost control of his life force, it would leak away as he fought. Even with the tremendous life force as a primordial realm expert, he still would not be able to endure it once the battle became drawn out. Moreover, life-devouring beasts rapidly grew in strength as they devoured life force. As time went on, they would become even more troublesome. Infinite Prime is already the highest realm of cultivation in this world. There shouldn't be a lot of people who have successfully killed an Infinite Prime life-devouring beast. If I kill the one before me and take its corpse back to the saint's world, it should be extremely precious. Jian Chen's eyes gradually lit up as he stared at the life-devouring beast that launched attacks furiously. His eyes shone brighter and brighter as he began to think about the possibilities. He had already heard about how the remains of life-devouring beasts were a fantastic material for refining pills. It only needed to be added during the refining process to increase the effects of pills drastically, making them even more effective. The Tianyuan clan had already developed to a certain degree now. They had begun to erect something for refining pills as well. It was likely that in the future, a large amount of god-tier pills would flow out of the Tianyuan clan, so the remains that could strengthen the effects of pills would be a needed item. When he thought of that, Jian Chen's eyes suddenly shone with cold killing intent. Originally, he did not plan on killing the life-devouring beast. He only wanted to keep it at bay so that it could not pose any threat to the group. Now, after realizing the value of the beast, he immediately changed his mind. Booms constantly rang out in the forest. Powerful pulses of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, flattening all the land within several hundred kilometers. All of the vegetation had either been uprooted by the pulses of energy and blown away or annihilated by the terrifying storms of energy. Pits appeared in the ground one after another as countless cracks crisscrossed the earth, forming web-like ravines. This was all created by the life-devouring beast. Its every single strike possessed tremendous might, enough to shake the earth. A swing of its paws would result in a huge pit. The collision of its tail whipping against the ground would result in a chasm several dozen kilometers length. The entire forest was reduced to a mess by its violent attacks. It no longer resembled the past anymore. Countless life-devouring beasts fled for their lives. Hundreds of kilometers away, the eagle that Jian Chen had tamed flapped its wings wildly as well. Its eyes were filled with shock, fleeing for its life as if it were stricken with fear. On the battlefield, Jian Chen would flicker about. With each flash, he seemed to have teleported to a different location, calmly and easily dodging the life-devouring beast's attacks. With his current strength, combined with the laws of space, he could endure a lifetime's worth of attacks from the life-devouring beast and not have it touch his clothes if he wanted. Crack! There was an explosion in the air, and a shadow ripped through the air, whipping towards Jian Chen with lightning speed. It was the tail of the life-devouring beast. The tail spanned several dozens meters in length and flickered with energy. It instantly elongated to over 1,000 meters in length when it swung over. Jian Chen did not worry about such an attack. He had dodged many attacks like that before. However, he did not dodge like before this time. Instead, he hovered in the air with his head held high and a hand behind his back. His eyes swelled with killing intent. Just as the tail was about to land on him, he suddenly waved his right hand. All of a sudden, there was a flash of blinding white light that transformed into a huge strand of sword chi. Shining with a dazzling glow, it directly chopped towards the incoming tail. The sword chi moved extremely quickly. It was to the point where it was indescribable. It seemed to have broken the laws of the world, flashing past the tail with lightning speed. The huge, powerful tail of the life-devouring beast seemed as weak as paper before it. When the sword chi swept past, the tail was severed. A huge part of the tail directly fell down. It was 200 to 300 meters in length and several meters wide. It collapsed onto the ground like a part of a city's wall. The tail was a part of the life-devouring beast's flesh. It was the treasure that many of the prodigies had desired but lacked the ability to retrieve. Now, it had just been cut off so easily by Jian Chen, laying on the ground quietly. A space ring immediately flew out from Jian Chen's hand, allowing him to collect the tail. The flesh of a primordial realm life-devouring beast was worth far more than the flesh of godhood life-devouring beasts. He could not afford to waste a single part of it. To the other side of the battlefield, the life-devouring beast howled in agony after its tail was cut off. Its voice was deep but filled with a sense of madness from the pain. Not only did the injury fail to strike any fear into its heart, but it had even roused its bestial nature instead. It made it even more crazy and even more bloodthirsty. It let out a tremendous roar and revealed its sharp canines, biting towards Jian Chen. At the same time, its life force began to churn. The severed tail grew back at a visible but slow rate. Jian Chen used his finger as a sword, and a strand of sword chi shot out. Like a streak of light, it directly shot into the life-devouring beast's mouth and pierced its entire body, leaving behind a fist-sized hole. Such a wound would be rather heavy to cultivators, but it was basically nothing to the primordial realm life-devouring beast thanks to its tremendous life force. It was not even enough to scratch an itch. It made a full recover very quickly with its tremendous life force. Even Jian Chen's chaotic body paled in comparison in terms of regeneration. What powerful vitality! It has reached an extremely astounding level. Even Jian Chen could not help but exclaim. However, he was not surprised, as he knew that the two world mountains, along with all the life-devouring beasts here, were basically created by the grand exalt of the wood spirits. I won't be able to kill this primordial realm life-devouring beast as easily as those godhood life-devouring beasts. I can't sever its life force with a single strike. I have to overwhelm it completely and slice it into pieces faster than it can regenerate. After that, I need to seal up its remains one by one. Only then can I kill it, Jian Chen thought. Although depleting all of the life-devouring beast's life force would also kill it, the value of these life-devouring beasts was in their pure and tremendous life force. Once all of their life force was depleted, their remains would just become a husk, and their value would plummet as a result. Chapter 2708, Slain. The main reason why the sacrificial soldiers could kill the life-devouring beasts in the large-scale battles earlier was because the life-devouring beasts had sustained wounds that were simply too severe. Their consumption of life force completely exceeded their speed at devouring life force. Hence, they ran out of life force and die in the end. Although the remains of life-devouring beasts that had died like this would still possess some of their vitality and could also be used for refining pills, the effects would obviously be much worse compared to remains that still possessed their full vitality. However, primordial realm life-devouring beasts were not like godhood life-devouring beasts. There was a tremendous number of godhood life-devouring beasts, so Jian Chen was not concerned with whether some of them still possessed most of their vitality or not. However, Jian Chen treated primordial realm life-devouring beasts like treasures, so he obviously hoped to maintain most of their vitality. It looks like I have to finish this battle as soon as possible. At the same time, in order to prevent the loss of too much of its life force, I can't injure it too much. I have to deal a fatal blow every time I harm it. Only then can I kill it as quickly as possible, thought Jian Chen. He looked at the tail that the life-devouring beast had already regrown. He knew that he could not continue using the method of cutting the life-devouring beast down one limb at a time. Primordial realm life-devouring beasts could recover their limbs far too quickly. They could basically regrow one in just a few seconds, and every time they did that, it would consume some of its life force. Such a matter was not what Jianshan hoped for. It looks like I can only use that move if I want to end the battle quickly. Jianshan easily dodged the ball of energy the life-devouring beast had spat out. His gaze suddenly sharpened, and a magnificent strand of silver-white sword chi slowly surged around his right hand. The strand of sword chi was not as simple as a pure strand of sword chi. The power of the ways flowed through it such that it gathered the power of the laws of the sword. It was much more powerful than any of Jianshan's prior attacks in this battle. He swung the sword chi forward gently. With that, the sword chi, along with half of his arm, vanished. It was as if they had completely melded with space. In the next moment, the life-devouring beast suddenly trembled. Its eyes were filled with pain, and it could not help but emit a heart-wrenching howl. Its tremendous body collapsed onto the ground with a great thud, even shaking up the ground. After it collapsed, dazzling white light suddenly appeared from its tremendous body. The white light grew brighter and brighter, shining from its body as if it were making its way out by ripping through the life-devouring beast's body. The life-devouring beasts constantly howled in pain. Its huge body trembled as its life force erupted inside, enveloping it completely. It seemed like it had suffered an extremely severe wound. This process lasted for just 5 seconds before the dazzling white light finally emerged from the life-devouring beast's body. It was like a sun that had burned its way out, shining luminously. Every ray of light seemed to be composed of sharp blades. Wherever the light passed by, the life-devouring beast would be sliced open. Immediately, the powerful life-devouring beast seemed to be struck by thousands of hits. It became riddled with holes, covered in wounds of various sizes. There were so many wounds that its body was close to falling apart. Only some of its flesh still clung to its body such that it was not completely ripped to pieces. This move was the secret technique that Jianshan had comprehended himself, the shadowless life-taking strike. The shadowless life-taking strike was an attack utilizing a fusion between the laws of the sword and the laws of space. It could bypass any distance, any obstacle, and all defenses, directly appearing in the body of the enemy and attacking from the inside out. This strike was so powerful that Jianshan had directly killed a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime with it when he wielded the 9-star sword of heavenly ways. Although he no longer had his sword, so the secret technique was weakened as a result, it was still plenty to deal with a 3rd heavenly layer infinite prime. As a result, that move alone had pushed the life-devouring beast to the edge of death. It was close to dying. If it were an ordinary infinite prime, it would have died immediately. It only survived thanks to its tenacious vitality. However, in the next moment, the life-devouring beast began to struggle to its feet. Its surroundings were filled with dense life force. Wrapped by the vitality, its wounds recovered rapidly. "I can't let you waste so much vitality," Jianshan murmured. He felt slightly dizzy and understood that he could not use the shadowless life-taking strike frequently. The stronger the battle skill or secret technique, the greater the cost of using it. Even some grand primes could not withstand peak god-tier battle skills. The shadowless life-taking strike was incredibly powerful, so its associated cost was obviously high. With a flash, Jianshan immediately arrived before the life-devouring beast and swung down at its spine with powerful sword chi. The life-devouring beast was close to falling apart. Most of its flesh had been cut off, with only a bare minimum holding it together. With Jianshan's attack, its body immediately split in half along the waist. Jianshan jolted his hand, and the sword condensed from sword chi in his hand suddenly shot out as a series of blurs. Immediately, the latter half of the life-devouring beast's huge body was cut into hundreds of pieces. Afterwards, strands of chaotic force shot out from his hand, sealing up the pieces of flesh one by one and cutting off their connection with one another to prevent the vitality in them from flowing away. At the same time, he cut off the possibility of the flesh reconstructing back together. With the pieces sealed up, the life-devouring beast immediately lost its connection with that portion of its body. It finally felt a tinge of fear, along with a raging fury. Suddenly, a strange pulse appeared. The closed eye on its forehead finally opened slowly as it faced the threat of death. The eye did not open very quickly, but a pulse of energy that completely surpassed the life-devouring beast's cultivation suddenly exploded from the eye as it opened. It twisted its head, and the third eye immediately locked onto Jian Chen. An inky green light shot out with unbelievable speed. Jian Chen immediately felt a great restraining force appear out of nowhere. However, against his current battle prowess, such a restraining force was nothing. Only when he faced the incoming beam of green light did he feel somewhat interested. The power of the eye is enough to rival fifth heavenly layer infinite primes. Among infinite primes, that's basically as good as it gets. Jian Chen swung his hand and produced a strand of sword qi, shattering the beam of light. Given his current level of strength, he could kill sixth heavenly layer infinite primes without using the 9-star sword of heavenly ways. An attack at the fifth heavenly layer obviously could not threaten him. After using its trump card, the life-devouring beast became haggard. Clearly, using the move took an extremely great toll on it. Jian Chen took advantage of this opportunity and immediately launched a full-strength attack. A shining white strand of sword qi slashed down at its forehead, splitting the upper half of the life-devouring beast into quarters. At a time like this, the life-devouring beast had completely lost the ability to fight back. Even its powerful life force was useless, unable to heal its wounds. Jian Chen's attack was simply too powerful. Every attack wreaked fatal damage. In no way could it recover as quickly as Jian Chen destroyed it. At the same time, Jian Chen was sealing up the pieces as he destroyed the beast, which only made matters worse for the life-devouring beast. In a few seconds, the third heavenly layer infinite prime life-devouring beast completely died off. All of its remains were sealed up by Jian Chen before being tossed into a space ring. Chapter 2709. Seeing the light of day once more. Infinite primes are the most powerful existences in the world of the fallen beast, and it's even rarer to have experts who can kill infinite prime life-devouring beasts. There must only be a handful of them in the world of the fallen beast. I wonder how many primordial realm life-devouring beasts have died before I killed this one. Maybe this is the first primordial realm life-devouring beast to die. If that really is the case, its remains will truly be priceless in the outside world. Jian Chen studied the remains that filled an entire space ring in satisfaction as he pondered to himself. He was not in need of wealth. After all, when he destroyed the Gloomwater sect, he had already obtained the tremendous wealth of a peak sect. After the chaos on the Cloud Plane, he had been allocated a portion of the Four Symbols Alliance's wealth as well. As a matter of fact, Jian Chen had obtained a portion of the resources within the space rings of the Grand Primes that his seniors from the Martial Soul lineage had killed. The resources that Grand Primes possessed were so plentiful that it was beyond the imagination of ordinary cultivators. The resources accumulated by a peak organization over many years were also unbelievably plentiful. So much wealth gathered together could sustain the Tian Yuan clan for several tens of thousands of years, even at the rate that the clan was consuming it. As a result, he was not in need of cultivation resources or wealth. He did not plan on selling the remains of the primordial realm life-devouring beast. Instead, he wanted to use it for his clan. The value and scarcity of pills refined from the remains of primordial realm life-devouring beasts were self-evident. It could strengthen the effects of God-tier pills by 30%. It was impossible for any organization to have too much of it. However, I do need to clean up the battlefield. I need to cover it up as a battle between two primordial realm life-devouring beasts. Otherwise, the primordial realm experts of the Darkstar race will immediately deduce that an infinite prime has come in from the outside world with their smarts when they discover this place. If they prepare themselves because of this, it'll be detrimental to what I'm doing next. Jian Chen glanced past the battlefield that spanned several dozen kilometers. The light in his eyes flickered before he immediately began the cleanup. He arranged things around to cover up the traces of battle, erasing all traces of the laws of the sword. Moreover, he used his mastery over the laws of space to forcefully disturb the space there. That way, even if the primordial realm experts from the Dark Star race turned back time to see the past, they would still find nothing. This would be the case unless there were stronger chaotic primes or grand primes among the Dark Star race, as only experts like that could spot problems in the space that Jian Shen had disturbed when they turned back time. Although it was rather unlikely for the primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race to come to the center of the two world mountains, Jian Shen was preparing for the worst-case scenario. After cleaning up the battlefield, Jian Shen checked through it all closely once more. Only after confirming that he had missed nothing did he leave. Several thousand kilometers away, the eagle that Jian Shen had tamed currently stood high up on the crown of a tree. It stared in the direction of Jian Shen and the primordial realm life-devouring beasts battle. As a late god king life-devouring beast king, the eagle possessed a certain level of intelligence. It understood the primordial realm life-devouring beast's strength very well. According to its knowledge, that life-devouring beast was the ruler and sovereign of this piece of land. It was the absolute existence, so strong that it was undefeatable. Now, that human had clashed with the ruler of this land. It seemed to want to see whether the powerful human was the ruler's opponent or not. However, due to the ruler's terrifying pressure, the eagle was either afraid of being caught up in the battle or displeasing the ruler, so it flew far away to several thousand kilometers away. It was unable to see anything on the battlefield from so far away because the mist had blocked everything. It could only sense the terrifying pulses of energy from afar and the ruler's constant roars of anger and howls of pain. You didn't actually leave. Have you been waiting here for me to return? As the eagle focused on the direction of the battle, a rather familiar voice suddenly rang out from behind it. Afterwards, the eagle sensed that a person had appeared silently on its back. The person was Jian Shen. Jian Shen had appeared on the eagle's back like he had teleported through the wondrous laws of space. Jian Shen's sudden appearance frightened the eagle rather significantly. Its tremendous body suddenly shuddered, and it began to tremble heavily. It shook off quite a few leaves from the tree below as it almost lost its balance and fell down. Fortunately, it flapped its wings to stabilize itself in time. The eagle suddenly turned its head around and stared at the figure who just stood on its back. The human had returned, while the absolute ruler of the land had fallen silent. Although the eagle was not particularly intelligent, it was not exactly dumb either. The circumstances had allowed it to understand something, which made its heart tremble even more. Jian Shen looked at the eagle and could not help but smile. It looks like you've grown accustomed to being my mount. Whatever, I won't mistreat you. Once I leave this place in a few days' time, I'll give you something fantastic. As Jian Shen said that, he kicked his foot gently. The eagle obliged, and without the slightest hesitation, it immediately flapped its huge wings, taking off with a massive gust of wind. It flew off into the distance, far more obedient than before. For the next few days, Jian Shen continued to lurk in the shadows with the eagle. He continued to clear obstacles for the group, playing the role of an unknown guardian. Of course, he did not eliminate all the life-devouring beasts along the way, just the stronger ones that would delay the group. In order to prevent the more cautious people in the group from spotting anything that would give him away, he even purposefully sent a few weaker life-devouring beasts over to reduce their suspicion. In the blink of an eye, another half a month passed by. On this day, Jian Shen seemed to discover something as he rested on the eagle's back lazily and hummed to himself. He suddenly opened his eyes and shot up, staring into the distance in interest. Once in a while, the senses of his soul would expand so that he could inspect the surroundings to see whether there were any life-devouring beasts that could pose a threat to the group. Just when he expanded his senses once more, he discovered that the mist was actually thinning out several million kilometers away. Jian Shen immediately understood that they were about to leave the two world mountains from this. This made Jian Shen strangely excited. Afterwards, he used the laws of space to leave. He constantly flickered through the trees and mountains. With each flash, he would cover 1,000,000 kilometers. Hence, after just a few flashes, he had appeared several million kilometers away where the mist was thinning. Standing in this region, Jian Shen could clearly sense that the mist's impact on the senses of his soul was weakening. He immediately expanded it as far as he could. After a short moment, the senses of his soul surpassed the 10 million kilometers limit when he was in the mist. It reached 15 million kilometers and continued onwards, enveloping a larger and larger area. 18 million kilometers. 20 million kilometers. 25 million kilometers. 30 million kilometers. In the end, Jianchen reached his limit at a total of 38 million kilometers. That was almost 4 times his range while within the mist. Of course, that was not the limit of a primordial realm expert. A grand prime could easily envelope an entire plane or even more than that. A chaotic prime could envelope an entire region, which would be a fifth of a plane's area. How wide was a region? That was something that would be measured using units of billions of kilometers, and that was only the unit of measurement. Although an infinite prime was not as great as a chaotic prime, an infinite prime could normally envelope much more than 45 million kilometers, not to mention that Jianchen's soul was not ordinary. The mist is not the only thing suppressing the senses of the soul. There's the world as well. In the world of the fallen beast, the senses of the soul can only cover a range of around half of its capability in the outside world or even less than that. Is that because of the will of the Grand Exalts? Jianchen wondered. Chapter 27:10, 100 Saint City. I just wonder if the restraint on the senses of the soul only affects us outsiders or the Dark Star race as well. Besides, when the laws operate here, there isn't the same full and mellow feeling one experiences in the saint's world. If I do anything here, the physical toll of using the power of laws is 50% greater than in the Two World Mountains. Jianchen closed his eyes to sense the surroundings and could not help but frown. Using the power of laws depleted the power of the soul. If he fought here, the power of his soul would run out much faster than in the outside world. He discovered that after leaving the Two World Mountains, the restrictions had increased instead. 100 Saint City is actually there. 20 million kilometers away from the Two World Mountains, Jianchen finally found the 100 Saint City that the group behind him was searching for. He had learned a little about the origins of the 100 Saint City from He Qianqian. It was a city erected over many years through the combined efforts of many peak organizations of the Saints' world. It had taken up a tremendous amount of wealth and resources. The city was the main base that the peak organizations had created in the world of the fallen beast. It was the only footing they had here. Not only was it a safe haven, but it was also a center of trade. Due to the unique characteristics of the world of the fallen beast, many rare items that could not be found in the Saints' world would appear here. Even many peak clans of the Saints' world were unable to ignore some of the resources, with the remains of life-devouring beasts being of particular note. They were extremely precious. Based on the same logic, there were many cultivation and heavenly resources that the Dark Star race needed from the Saints' world. These would not appear in the world of the fallen beast and could only be imported from the outside world. As a result, the 100 Saint City became the place of trade between the many organizations of the Saints' world and the Dark Star race. The people of the two worlds engaged in exchange for what they needed. Now, after Jianchen finally saw the 100 Saint City, he was slightly shocked. This was because the 100 Saint City was not just a simple city. Inspecting it with his powerful senses, he could tell with a single glance that it was actually a god artifact. This was a god artifact that had reached the limits of low quality, and it was almost on par with medium-quality god artifacts. If it were just a low-quality god artifact, it would not have been enough to elicit Jianchen's current reaction. What really opened Jianchen's eyes was that the city was actually constructed from hundreds of thousands or maybe even over 1 million high-quality and supreme-quality saint artifacts. No, not constructed. It was more like something assembled and put together. The frame of the grand city gates was composed of a single supreme-quality saint artifact. The two planks that formed the gate was each a supreme-quality saint artifact as well. The gate tower above the gate was assembled from over a dozen supreme-quality saint artifacts. Meanwhile, every brick that formed the long walls was a high-quality saint artifact. All these high-quality and supreme-quality saint artifacts were joined together through a large formation, allowing them to unite their strength into one. It was perfect, which was why it was transformed into a god artifact. Of course, this was not a true god artifact. However, it possessed all the power that God artifacts would. The extraordinary craftsmanship allowed all the saint artifacts to fall into place perfectly. It was like they were truly a single piece. It was impossible to find any flaws in the entire structure. It was basically a perfect piece of art. So many saint artifacts had been brought in from the outside world individually. They only needed to be placed down accurately, and all their power can be combined into a God artifact. What extravagancy, what exquisite craftsmanship. The person who created this city must have reached a level of mastery in regards to their comprehension of forging items. Jian Shen could not help but sigh in surprise. Under the circumstances where God artifacts were forbidden from being taken in, they were still able to create a city like this. It was truly admirable. The various descendants of the Peak clans could maintain a certain level of authority in this world dominated by the Darkstar race even without primordial realm experts thanks to the protection of such a powerful city. However, at this time, the 100 Saints city clearly seemed to be facing a bad situation. From 20 million kilometers away, Jian Shen could see exactly what was happening through the senses of his soul. The 4 city gates were tightly closed, while the city walls and the streets of the city were covered with blood. Many bodies lay in pools of blood, they completely lacked any presence and were clearly already dead. From their attires, Jian Shen could tell that all of these cultivators came from the various Peak clans of the Saints' world. All of them had been slaughtered mercilessly, reduced to cold corpses. Groups of cultivators in black clothes could be seen patrolling the streets of the city constantly. They were not humans. All of them possessed a dark star on their forehead. These cultivators were clearly from the Darkstar race. The entire 100 Saints city had already fallen into the hands of the Darkstar race. There were no longer any descendants of the Peak organizations. Only a few independent cultivators hid in some of the inns as they trembled. These independent cultivators clearly were not the targets of the Darkstar race. The people of the Darkstar race actually possessed the method to control the 100 Saints city. They have primordial realm experts as well. It looks like it won't be easy for Jin Hong and the others to take back the city. They might even fail. Jian Shen sighed secretly. Even though the various clans had sent in many sacrificial soldiers, he did not believe that these sacrificial soldiers were enough to contend with the primordial realm experts of the Darkstar race even though they could unleash strength at the primordial realm through their formations. A difference in strength existed even among infinite primes. The Darkstar race definitely would have powerful primordial realm experts, while the formations from the sacrificial soldiers could only equate to a few weaker infinite primes. Jian Shen did not stay there for too long. He withdrew the senses of his soul and returned to the 2 world mountains. With a few flashes, he returned to the back of the eagle. Since he had made his way out of the 2 world mountains already, he no longer needed the group to lead the way. However, the group was clearly still in danger. According to their pace, they would still need 2 or 3 days to make it out. I'll be leaving soon. However, as you've served as my mount during this period of time, you've worked hard even if it's not exactly meritorious. I did say that I'll give you something good when I leave, Jian Shen said calmly as he stood on the back of the eagle. Afterwards, he waved his hand, and a large clump of flesh and blood flew out from his space ring. An invisible force wrapped around it, bringing it before the eagle. This was the remains of a life-devouring beast, and it was not just any life-devouring beast. These remains came from the primordial realm life-devouring beast he had killed earlier. Moreover, this was not just any clump of flesh and blood either. It came from the life-devouring beast's brain. This part was too foul to be used for refining pills. There were far too many impurities, and the vitality it contained was actually less than other parts. It required further refining before it could be used. However, for late God King life-devouring beast kings, such an item was the ultimate nourishment. Chapter 27:11 Who are the ants? Looking at the remains hovering before it, the eagle obviously knew what it was. Its eyes were filled with desire as it constantly opened and closed its large beak. It was drooling. The remains of the primordial realm life-devouring beast could do more than just increase its strength. Most importantly, it possessed the true essence of the primordial realm. If it could absorb this true essence, although it might not break through to the next realm immediately, it would still set up a solid foundation for when it eventually did. The remains were basically a gateway to the primordial realm. It would allow it to get a glance of the world and mysteries of the primordial realm. Although it might not guarantee a breakthrough, the existences that were most likely to break through out of all the life-devouring beast kings of the two world mountains were those who had gained a peep at the primordial realm. Life-devouring beasts were not cultivators and were unlike the cultivators outside. They possessed their own cultivation methods and their own ways to break through. The eagle stared at the remains that Jian Shen had tossed out. Despite its raging desires and temptations, it still seemed to be worried about something. At that moment, it actually did not devour the remains. Instead, it glanced at Jian Shen constantly in surprise and uncertainty. Jian Shen could tell that the remains from the primordial realm life-devouring beast was just too valuable. The eagle did not seem to believe that Jian Shen would be willing to give something like that to it, which is why it hesitated. It was as if it were afraid of understanding the situation incorrectly and invoking Jian Shen's wrath by accidentally eating the remains. Jian Shen broke into laughter from this sight. The eagle seemed to be slightly more clever than he had imagined it to be since it had thought of all this. It's a special reward for you. Just eat it. Don't worry too much. Jian Shen smiled gently. At the same time, a mental pulse entered the eagle's head. It would be easier for the eagle to understand him that way. Immediately, the eagle's eyes lit up brightly, and it produced a joyous cry before swallowing the remains in a single gulp. It was a life-devouring beast king, equivalent to a late god king, but it had yet to reach the limits of the realm. These remains would allow it to reach the limits as quickly as possible. If it took a step further than that, it would formally reach the primordial realm and become the absolute ruler of this land. Afterwards, Jian Shen's figure vanished from the eagle's back suddenly. This time, he was really leaving the eagle that had served as his mount for so long. Perhaps they would never meet again in the future. I do have some understanding of the world of the fallen beast, but that is only a rough overview at most. Now, with what has happened to 100 Saint City, the situation in the world of the fallen beast will obviously be in a state of constant change as well. It looks like I need to find a cultivator who has been here for a long time to get a better understanding, thought Jian Shen. He expanded the senses of his soul, using half to envelop the two world mountains and the other half to surround the region outside. Within the range of several tens of million kilometers, he obviously discovered many cultivators. There were members of the Darkstar race from the world of the fallen beast, as well as cultivators of various clans from the outside world. However, basically all of them were locked in combat. Some fought life-devouring beasts in an attempt to hunt them down for their remains, while others fought with the Darkstar race. Basically all the people hunting life-devouring beasts were independent cultivators or small groups or organizations that had nothing to do with the peak clans that controlled the 100 Saint City. Without an exception, all the people who fought against the Darkstar race came from peak clans. Got it. Jian Shen made up his mind and immediately vanished. He did not protect the group anymore. He had already left the two world mountains, so he no longer needed them to show him the way. Moreover, the group was currently close to leaving the mountains as well, and there were no more powerful life-devouring beasts nearby. The only life-devouring beasts around were much weaker, so they were not enough to pose a threat to the group. I'll go check on the current situation of the world of the fallen beast first before finding He Qianxian to ask her about the Ice Goddess Hall, thought Jian Shen. Through his laws of space, he quickly covered ground like he was teleporting. With a few flashes, he appeared a few million kilometers away. This was still within the range of the two world mountains but only in the very outskirts. The mist here was extremely thin. Of course, the mist here was ordinary mist. Absorbing any of it would not lead to any issues, unlike what had happened in the depths of the two world mountains. Jian Shen hovered in the air and took out a mask from his space ring, then put it on. After wearing the mask, his entire presence immediately underwent an overwhelming change. That was not all. Even his body and appearance became foreign. This mask was the one Mo Tianyun had given to him in the past. The mask was extraordinary. After wearing it, it could completely change the presence and appearance of a person such that even Grand Primes would struggle to see through it. Only supreme experts who had reached the 9th heavenly layer of Grand Prime would possess the necessary ability. Moreover, it did not give off any pressure or pulses of energy like a god artifact, so when Jianshan passed through the entrance of the world of the fallen beast with it, it was not recognized as a god artifact, allowing Jianshan to smoothly access the world while carrying it. Through the mask, Jianshan had become a brutal middle-aged man. There was a slash across his forehead that seemed to originate from the claws of life-devouring beasts, which also made him look rather vicious. In particular, weaker cultivators would not even be willing to meet his sharp and bloodthirsty gaze. After changing his appearance, Jianshan flew towards the 100 Saints city at a steady pace. When he had traveled 100 kilometers, the intense sounds of fighting rang out from up ahead. Over a dozen people from the Darkstar race were currently pursuing several cultivators who wore similar uniforms. These cultivators were clearly from a peak clan from the Saints' world, but currently, they were all riddled with wounds and covered with blood. They were injured. There were only 8 of them, consisting of 2 early god kings and 6 overgods. On the other hand, the Darkstar race had a total of 5 god kings, with the rest being late overgods. They had around twice as many people. The 8 people faced the attacks of the Darkstar race as they fled into the depths of the 2 world mountains. The land beyond the 2 world mountains belonged to the Darkstar race. In other words, the Darkstar race controlled all the land aside from the 2 world mountains in the world of the fallen beast. The only way for the cultivators to survive was to enter the depths of the 2 world mountains. Although the depths were also filled with danger, it offered them a chance of survival at the very least. It was better than staying outside, a place where death was certain. However, in their current state, it would clearly be difficult for them to flee into the depths. Does the 6th Hall Master really plan on killing us all? Your actions will only anger the clan behind us. Do you know just how much power our clan possesses in the Saints' world? Even Grand Primes will die if they offend our clan. Your mere Darkstar race doesn't even have a chaotic prime. You're just digging your own graves like this. One of the God Kings bellowed out furiously. His cultivation method was extraordinary, and his battle skills were extremely powerful as well. Additionally, he had countless secret techniques. He blocked the attacks from 3 of the God Kings of the Darkstar race. This was a genius raised by the peak clans of the Saints' world. Even though their battle prowess was not as great as the supreme God Kings on the God King's throne, they were still the experts among the experts of their level. Many of the prodigies from the large group, such as He Qianqian of the Heavenly Crane clan, Ping Yixing of the Empire Lotus Sword sect, Sun Ji of the Sun family, Guang Wanhua of the Sacred Light clan, and so on, were only stronger than this God King. However, their brilliance was obscured when they faced the life-devouring beasts. You better stop trying to scare us with your Saints' world background. If your Grand Primes are so capable, why don't you tell them to come to the Darkstar world to avenge you? If you have Grand Exalts in your organization, our entire race would treat you as valued guests. Let alone the 10 great Hall Masters, even our great Darkstar Emperor would personally receive you. Unfortunately, you don't have Grand Exalts. Since you don't have Grand Exalts, we don't fear you, don't blame us. Killing you all was the 7th Hall Master's idea. We're just carrying out his command. During the next millennium, the entire Darkstar race will be managed by the 7th Hall Master. Who told your foreign organizations to offend our 7th Hall Master? The God King experts of the Darkstar race sneered in response. Clearly, they did not take these foreign organizations seriously at all from their scornful gazes. They understand that no foreign organization could threaten the Darkstar race in the Darkstar world because anyone who entered here could not be more than 1,000 years old. What level of cultivation would they reach in a single millennium? No matter how monstrous a prodigy was, they would basically remain at God King. Even if they did break through to the primordial realm, they still would not catch the eyes of the Darkstar race. The Darkstar race had more than a single primordial realm expert. The 10 Hall Masters were all primordial realm experts, and there was the Darkstar Emperor who had reached peak infinite prime as well. Only organizations with Grand Exalts would truly strike fear into the Darkstar race. They would be afraid of offending them and would instead attempt to get on their good side. Grand exalts were enough to break through the wills and seals left behind in the past by the grand exalts of the wood spirits and the Darkstar race. They could use their supreme might to destroy the prison and let the Darkstar race out. Do you outsiders really think that you can act as you wish in the Darkstar world with just 100 Saint City? I'll tell you the truth. In our clan's eyes, you outsiders are just a bunch of ants. If we're in a bad mood, we can crush you however we want to. If it weren't for the resources you brought in from the outside world, why would we let a bunch of ants contaminate our sacred land? The last God King of the Darkstar race said, further adding naked insults. We outsiders are just a bunch of ants that you can crush whenever you want to? Who's bold enough to say that? At this moment, a heavy voice suddenly rang out from the depths of the mist. With that, a man in animal hides emerged from the mist. He hovered at a low altitude and arrived between the two groups very soon. He was a large, middle-aged man. He did not carry a weapon, and there was a vicious wound on his face. He gave off a heavy presence. He was Jian Chen. Jian Chen landed on the ground. He studied the 5 god kings of the Darkstar race with a glance and said with a harsh voice, "Who said we were ants earlier? How dare you look down on us outsiders like this? Was it you? You? Or you?" As he said that, Jian Chen pointed at the 5 god kings of the Darkstar race one by one. He was provoking them. Chapter 27:12, A Single Punch in the Darkstar World. The people of the Darkstar race never treated the outsiders as a big deal. They knew that in the Saints' world, these outsiders were very powerful, extremely powerful, so powerful that they could annihilate the entire Darkstar race with a single breath. However, they also knew that as long as these great experts could not enter here, those who could enter were paper tigers at most, regardless of how strong they were. The outsiders were all ants who could be crushed whenever. None of the people of the Darkstar race took them seriously. As a result, when Jian Chen provoked the God Kings of the Darkstar race after disguising himself as a middle-aged man, the God Kings immediately became infuriated. Killing intent filled their eyes without any attempt to hide it. How dare you? An outsider independent cultivator is actually challenging us? Are you sick and tired of living? The 7th Hall Master is generous. He has already been benevolent enough to you lot by sparing you outsider independent cultivators and small groups, yet now you come to challenge us recklessly without any consideration for your life. This is unforgivable. Bow your head to the ground immediately and admit your mistake, and we'll leave you with a full corpse. Otherwise, we'll cut you up into pieces and feed you to the life-devouring beasts. The God Kings of the Darkstar race roared as they looked at Jian Chen like he was a dead man. The cultivators hunted down by the Darkstar race seemed to see a ray of hope. Their eyes became filled with joy. The 8 of them practiced extraordinary cultivation methods and possessed powerful battle skills, which made them extremely strong. They could take on 3 early God Kings alone, but they could not last forever while doing that. At the same time, if they used their powerful secret techniques and battle skills, it would take an extremely great toll on them as well, or even make them pay a certain price. If this battle became dragged out, they would still suffer defeat in the end and die at the hands of the Darkstar race. With Jian Chen's appearance and the presence of a God King he vaguely gave off, the outsiders saw a glimmer of hope. "Brother, we are from the Hao family. Please assist us in killing the enemies, and our Hao family will be endlessly grateful to you," one of the Hao family God Kings immediately called out. He was burning his essence blood to fight 3 people at once, which took a great toll on him. His origin energy was depleted, and he had no time to replenish it through divine crystals either. He was almost at the end of the line. He could not last much longer. An additional God King at a time like this would not increase their chances of victory significantly, but they would have the opportunity to use a secret technique to heavily injure or even kill a Darkstar race God King as long as they could keep a Darkstar race God King busy. Such a result would increase their chances of escape. Jian Chen was composed, only looking at the 5 God Kings from the Darkstar race. He did not pay too much attention to the Hao family. He had appeared because he was about to save these people. He had never heard of the Hao family. Across the 49 Great Plains and 81 Great Planets of the Saints' world, there were many peak organizations littered in every corner. There were even some peak organizations that did not found their sects or clans on these planes or planets, but in a region of outer space, altering it into a place that could sustain people. Overall, there really were quite a lot of peak organizations across the Saints' world. As long as an organization possessed a grand prime, they were a peak organization. With so many peak organizations, it was impossible for Jian Chen to know them all. When the God King of the Hao family stated his identity, he was rather proud, as the Hao family was a renowned existence across the entire Saints' world. It was a family that almost everyone knew about. Even among the peak organizations gathered in 100 Saint City, their Hao family possessed quite the authority. Almost all of the organizations would treat them politely. When any independent cultivator heard that they were the Hao family, they would all show great respect and fawn over them. However, when he looked back at Jian Chen, he was surprised, as he did not find any surprise or shock that he had imagined. The people of the Hao family were rather surprised instead when they saw his indifference. However, he soon seemed to think of something. In the Saints' world, there were many organizations that used the name of Hao family. After all, the Saints' world was just too large, and there were simply too many people. Coming across organizations with the same name was no longer something strange. As a matter of fact, even in the Dark Star race, some smaller organizations would share the same name as larger organizations that they had no relation with. We're the Hao family of the Prosper Plane. Brother, if you assist us, we can even provide a recommendation for you to join our Hao family once we return. On the Prosper Plane, our Hao family is a supreme organization that stands second above everyone else on the plane, the God King continued. He was afraid that Jian Chen did not understand the strength of the Hao family as an independent cultivator, so he added a few more details. At a desperate time like this, he worked rather hard to rope Jian Chen in. Jian Chen still did not waver, but when he heard the Prosper Plane, he could not help but raise an eyebrow. He was very sensitive to the Prosper Plane because that was where the heavenly palace of Bisheng resided. He still possessed a large amount of merit with the heavenly palace of Bisheng. Jian Chen could not help but look at these people in surprise. He had never thought that they came from the Prosper Plane. Since that was the case, he had to save them now. The God Kings of the Dark Star race had lost most of their patience. One of them called out, "What are you blabbering so much for when you're about to die? Stark, kill him." Stark was one of the 5 God Kings of the Dark Star race. He immediately abandoned one of the God Kings from the Hao family that he was fighting and rushed towards Jian Chen. The eyes of the God King who fought 3 people at the same time lit up. He had gone from 1 against 3 to 1 against 2, which lessened the pressure on him significantly. He immediately said to Jian Chen secretly, "Brother, keep him busy for 5 minutes." With that, his presence began to rise, but his face became even paler. 5 minutes? There's no need. Jian Chen shook his head gently. He could already tell that the God Kings was burning the power of his soul. Clearly, he was willing to throw his life away. "You dumb brute, I'll feed your corpse to the life-devouring beasts after all of this since you intruded upon the matters of our Dark Star race." On the other side, Stark had already arrived before Jian Chen. A meter-long spike appeared in his hand, and he stabbed it towards Jian Chen's forehead with pulsing energy. Jian Chen did not try to dodge or avoid it. Stark's spike landed on Jian Chen's forehead without any obstruction. Oh no, the independent cultivator is done for. Sigh, why is he so weak? He has been killed off right from the start, we're done for. And I had thought he could keep one of them busy. Turns out he's so weak. The other God King of the Hao family and the over-gods immediately became ashen when they saw this. Their glimmer of hope was put out in the blink of an eye. Stark secretly rejoiced. He really is a dumb brute. And I previously thought you had some strength for being a God King. Turns out you're so weak. But very soon, Stark's expression changed drastically. It was replaced by shock. His spike had failed to penetrate anything when it struck Jian Chen's forehead. Instead, it felt like he had hit something hard. The powerful backlash made his entire arm numb. How is this possible? Stark paled in surprise when he saw how Jian Chen's head was perfectly fine. However, before he had any time to respond, Jian Chen threw a punch. The punch contained the laws of strength and was vicious. Even the air exploded. Bang! The punch struck Stark's head, and it exploded, directly destroying Stark's soul. Chapter 27:13. Wuxia God Kings, even early God Kings, could be regarded as experts in a world that was dominated by infinite primes. Now, a God King had his head crushed and died in a single move. Not only did Jian Chen's strength stun the people of the Hao family, but even the eyes of the 4 other God Kings of the Dark Star race widened as they stared at Stark's headless corpse. They had temporarily forgotten to attack the people of the Hao family. Stark, why, you killed Stark. Afterwards, the 4 God Kings of the Dark Star race returned to their senses. They charged at Jian Chen as they roared out angrily and in shock. Stark's strength was roughly the same as theirs, yet he had been killed with a single punch. He could not even fight back. Did that not mean that if he were replaced by any one of them, their final fate would be the same? Immediately, the strength that Jian Chen had demonstrated struck fear into the hearts of the 4 other God Kings of the Dark Star race. How is this person so powerful? He killed an early God King with a single punch. Probably even late God Kings can't achieve something like that, but he's clearly just a mid-God King from his presence. The God Kings of the Hao family were extremely shocked. If they fought against a single early God King from the Dark Star race alone, they would be able to kill them, but they would definitely not be able to do it as easily as Jian Chen did. Fantastic, we're saved. The 6 overgods of the Hao family were overjoyed. If Jian Chen's appearance earlier had given them a glimmer of hope, then the strength he now displayed allowed they to see the hope of victory, the hope of turning the situation around and killing the 4 other God Kings of the Dark Star race. Senior, please kill them. Our Hao family will definitely return the favor with lavish gifts, said a God King of the Hao family. The 4 God Kings of the Dark Star race revealed very ugly expressions. They looked at each other, and one of them immediately pulled out a jade talisman in an attempt to report back and ask for reinforcements. However, Jian Chen was much faster than they had imagined him to be. Before the God King could activate the jade talisman, Jian Chen had already appeared before him. The laws of strength wrapped around Jian Chen, and he directly threw out a punch. Stop him. The other God Kings of the Dark Star race called out together. Now, they were in no circumstances to bother about the God Kings of the Hao family anymore. All the God Kings immediately gathered together, and 3 of them struck out at the same time. 3 swords surged together and swung towards Jian Chen with powerful pulses of energy. They covered for their companion who was requesting for reinforcements. Jian Chen was extremely adept at using the laws of strength. Hurling out a punch, all the strength in the surroundings gathered in his fist. It tore through everything, colliding with the 3 incoming swords fearlessly. Bang! 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 With that, the 3 high-quality saint artifacts were all repelled by Jian Chen. The powerful force of the punch caused the 3 God Kings to stumble a few steps backward. After repelling the 3 God Kings, his fist continued on with its residual power, striking the God King who was currently seeking reinforcements. Spurt! Blood erupted from the God King's mouth as he was blown away. He was rather heavily injured, but he had survived. Jian Chen was currently playing the role of a mid-God King. All of the strength that he demonstrated had to conform to this role. If he killed another God King in a single strike again, he would stand out far too much. Although the battle prowess he had demonstrated so far was on par with late God Kings, it was still within an acceptable range. After all, it was nothing special for a few prodigies in the Saints' world to be able to challenge and defeat those at higher levels of cultivation. Jian Chen stomped his foot, and he shot off like an arrow, catching up with the God King immediately. He threw out another punch and crushed the God King's head. The second God King was dead. In the blink of an eye, 2 God Kings had died. This surprised the God King of the Hao family, who was about to burn the power of his soul to use a secret technique. He was stunned. Afterwards, Jian Chen continued to launch attacks. His presence as a mid-God King erupted, and the laws of strength surrounded his body. Every strike pushed his strength to the limit, and every punch made the air explode. He killed the other two God Kings swiftly. Since Jian Chen's appearance, only a few seconds had passed. The entire battle truly could be described as concluding with lightning speed. The last God King of the Dark Star race was afraid. His eyes were filled with dread. He did not utter a single word, turning around and fleeing. "Where do you think you're going? Kill him. Don't let any of them escape." The two God Kings of the Hao family immediately pursued. They stopped the final God King, and very soon, the God King was slain. After all, he had to fight two people. A battle erupted among the overgods of both parties as well. Seeing how victory had already been determined, Jian Chen did not keep fighting. Instead, he stood there with his arm crossed as he gazed into the distance at the 100 Saints city. He expanded the senses of his soul far away and observed the situation of the 100 Saints city. He weighed his options secretly. "Thank you for your assistance. If it were not for your intervention, it would have probably been very difficult for us to survive." At this time, the two God Kings of the Hao family and the 6 overgods had slaughtered all the people of the Dark Star race. They all arrived before Jian Chen to thank him. After a simple introduction, Jian Chen learnt the names of the two God Kings. They were Hao Ran and Hao Chen. Chapter 27:14, The Strength of the Dark Star Race. However, as soon as they thought about the strength that Gu Qi had exhibited when he killed the God Kings of the Dark Star race, the two God Kings of the Hao family no longer found it strange. After all, given his strength, he would almost never face life-threatening danger provided he avoided the depths of the Two World Mountains. Even if he could not defeat his opponents, he could still run away. Having spent all these years in the Two World Mountains, Brother Gu Qi's understanding of the outside situation should be limited to back then. In the current world of the fallen beast, no, I should say the 100 Saints city, things have really changed drastically, Hao Ran said sternly and sorrowfully. Changed drastically? What has happened to the 100 Saints city? Jian Chen showed surprise as he acted ignorant. Many peak organizations from our saints' world worked together to create the 100 Saints city. It was our stronghold in the world of the fallen beast, but half a year ago, the people of the Dark Star race suddenly attacked out 100 Saints city. Then they declared war against several dozen organizations in the city at the same time. The Dark Star race are native to here. Not only do they have many God Kings, but they even have a few infinite primes. On the other hand, everyone who comes in from the outside must be under 1,000 years old. However, even the renowned peak organizations only have a handful of people who are able to reach God King within 1,000 years. Consequently, although several dozen peak organizations have gathered in 100 Saints city, we have never been the Dark Star race's opponent. Now, the 100 Saints city has fallen into the hands of the Dark Star race. Hao Ran let out a long sigh at this point. He looked in the direction of the 100 Saints city while filled with great reluctance to give up here. In the Saints world, an organization like the Dark Star race would not catch the eye of the Hao family at all. Any of the great elders of the Hao family could obliterate them. However, this was the world of the fallen beast. Although their Hao family was very powerful in the Saints world, they could not do anything to the Dark Star race. We already sent people out to request reinforcements half a year ago. I wonder when the reinforcements will arrive, said Hao Chen as he peered at the Two World Mountains. Reinforcements. Hao Ran became troubled when he heard that. He said with difficulty, the teleportation formation in 100 Saints city has already fallen into the hands of the Dark Star race. They have even closed the teleportation formation at the entrance of the world to the other cities. The teleportation formations among the Dark Star race can only take people between cities now. None of them lead to the entrance. They have even found and destroyed the secret formations we cast down. We can't count on reinforcements anymore. Has the world of the fallen beast become so dangerous already, where even the great organizations have fallen to such a state. It looks like I need to be careful in the future. Although I don't think I'm weak, offending the Dark Star race will only lead me to my death, said Jian Chen. Senior, but you just killed God Kings from the Dark Star race. You've already offended them. They'll never spare you. You might as well stick with us, Senior. There is strength in numbers, an over-god said hopefully from behind Hao Ran. She was disheveled, having blood and grime mixed together on her face. It sullied her appearance, but her voice remained crisp and rather pleasant to the ear. That doesn't apply to me. Although I've killed people of the Dark Star race, there's no one around besides you here. How would they know I killed them? Jian Chen smiled like he did not care. Afterwards, his gaze stopped on Hao Ran's group for a while, and he said, I think you won't be exposing this matter, right? You must be joking, Brother Gu Qi. You saved our lives. As members of the Hao family, we conduct ourselves righteously, without letting down the world or the ancestor, much less our own moral integrity. How could we do something so lacking in gratitude? Hao Ran and Hao Chen said seriously. Well, that's it for now. God Kings of the Dark Star race have died here, so I need to leave quickly. Otherwise, it'll be bad if people spot me. I've always stayed in the 100 Saints City in the past, but now that it has fallen into the hands of the Dark Star race, I won't go there anymore, just in case I get dragged into this whole matter. However, I've only been to the 100 Saints City in the entire world of the Fallen Beast. I don't know about the other cities at all. Do you happen to have a map of the world of the Fallen Beast, and can you tell me about the situation of the other cities? Jian Chen asked. Hao Ran and the others obviously had a map of the world of the Fallen Beast. As soon as they heard that Jian Chen needed it, they gave him a copy without any hesitation at all. At the same time, they gave him a jade slip that recorded the situation of the world of the Fallen Beast. In the end, Hao Chen gave Jian Chen a space ring that contained over 1,000,000 supreme-grade divine crystals and a few heavenly resources. However, Jian Chen refused to accept it. He left with just the map. It's a pity that I haven't found any news with regards to Sacred Feather. I wonder if it's because Hao Ran and Hao Chen haven't gone out in a very long time, or that their status is too low such that they don't even know about Sacred Feather, thought Jian Chen. He maintained his presence at Mid-God King as he flew close to the ground. He checked the map and the jade slip he had obtained as he flew. The map and the jade slip contained a lot of information regarding the Dark Star race. The map depicted a total of 38 cities. Apart from the 100 Saints City, the others were all under the Dark Star race's control. They formed 36 major cities and one capital city. The 36 major cities formed a ring around the capital city. From how it was arranged, it seemed a little like a huge formation. Countless smaller towns and cities existed around each major city. A capital city, 36 major cities, and hundreds of towns of various sizes. This was a map of the entire Dark Star race. Of course, that was not including the 100 Saints City. From the Jade Slip, Jian Chen gained a better understanding of the Dark Star race's overall strength and distribution of authority. The Dark Star Emperor was a supreme existence within the Dark Star race. He was in control of the entire Dark Star world and was in complete control of the lives of everyone in the Dark Star race. He was the undisputed ruler. Under the Dark Star Emperor were the 10 Divine Halls. The 10 Hall Masters were important figures only second to the Dark Star Emperor in the Dark Star world. Every single one of them was an infinite prime. The Dark Star Emperor had basically already taken a step back from governing the Dark Star world. He rarely interfered with any matter going on in the world. Basically all the matters of the world, regardless of size, were left to the 10 Divine Halls to handle. The authority of the Divine Halls would change every millennium. Every single Divine Hall would have a millennium's control and authority over the Dark Star world's matters. This millennium happened to be the 7th Hall Master's turn. The Jade Slip also contained a rough explanation of the other primordial realm experts of the Dark Star world. The Dark Star Emperor and the 10 Hall Masters were not the only primordial realm experts in the Dark Star world. Some of the Vice Hall Masters were infinite primes as well. Even some of the city lords from the 36 main cities had reached infinite prime. The Jade Slip only listed 5 city lords that were infinite primes. The remaining 31 were all god kings. Finally, it gave an introduction to a few god kings in the Dark Star world, as well as a few zones of danger. After looking through it all, Jian Chen's expression became rather ugly. The Dark Star race was stronger than he had imagined them to be. Just their infinite primes had amounted to 20. Moreover, that was a conservative estimate. Who knows if the Jade Slip's records of primordial realm experts were complete or not. Jian Chen did not pay too much attention to the god kings. He had comprehended the ultimate way of the sword, so all those below the primordial realm were ants to him. If Sacred Feather has been captured, he's probably in the capital city. Jian Chen's eyes locked onto the location of the capital city on the map. After disguising his presence, he immediately flew towards the closest major city. The Dark Star world was not exactly large or small. If he flew at full speed, it would not take him very long to cross the entire world. However, he was in the territory of the Dark Star race now, so he needed to hide himself well. Even when he covered ground, he could not expose his primordial realm strength. It would take quite some time if he traveled at the speed of a mid-god king. As a result, he could only use a teleportation formation to reach the capital city. Chapter 27:15 Dark Knight City. Dark Knight City was one of the 36 major cities of the Dark Star race, as well as the major city closest to Jian Chen. Jian Chen slowly flew through the air at the speed of a mid-god king and finally approached the first city he had seen that belonged to the Dark Star race after several hours. From afar, the Dark Knight City seemed no different from the cities of the Saints' world. It was surrounded by tall walls. The ancient and slightly outmoded walls gave off an aura of age. Who knew how long these lofty walls had stood there for? Jian Chen maintained his altitude at 100 meters. He looked at the ancient walls from afar as he thought about how large-scale battles probably rarely erupted in the Dark Star world. For example, capturing cities and claiming territory happened everywhere in the Saints' world, but would basically never happen in the Dark Star race as the Dark Star Emperor had conquered the entire place. As a result, basically all the city walls in the Dark Star race's territory stood purely for symbolic purposes. They did not have to be repaired for battles. And the city walls had quite a strong power. While this power did not grant the walls extraordinary defense, it ensured that they could stand the test of time. As he approached the Dark Knight City, cultivators gradually appeared in the surroundings. However, most of them came from the Saints' world. They bustled in and out of the Dark Knight City, which seemed extremely busy. Jian Chen had learnt from Hao Chen and Hao Ran that it was forbidden for all outsiders to fly within the cities that belonged to the Dark Star race. As a result, in order to avoid unnecessary problems, Jian Chen landed a few kilometers away from Dark Knight City and traveled over there by foot. But despite that, he moved extremely quickly. He would cross 100 meters with each step, arriving near the city gates in just a short while. Stop. Which clan or organization do you belong to? Why have you come to our Dark Knight City? A city guard stopped Jian Chen. He glared at him as he questioned arrogantly. Even though he knew Jian Chen was a god king, the over-god guard showed no fear at all. When he spoke, he even sounded like he wanted to provoke him. Their Dark Star race had never treated cultivators from outside seriously. Regardless of whether they came from peak organizations, the Dark Star race viewed them as people that could be trampled over at any time. The reason why their Dark Star race would behave with such unbridledness was because none of the cultivators from the outside world could pose any threat to them. Jian Chen ignored the guard's tone. He smiled while clasping his fist and said politely, "I am Gu Qi. I don't come from a sect or clan. I'm an independent cultivator. I hunted down a few life-devouring beasts in the Two World Mountains recently and I've come to the Dark Knight City this time to sell them. I hope they can fetch a good price, so I can get some cultivation resources." Sell life-devouring beasts? Is that true? The guard's eyes lit up. He immediately looked at Jian Chen's space ring and called out, "Hand over your space ring, so I can check if there are any issues with it. How can I just show my space ring to anybody? Jian Chen frowned as he sighed inside. He felt sorrow for the outside cultivators. Even a mighty mid-god king would have to be harassed by a over-god guard just to enter a city. In this place controlled by the Darkstar race, they really did treat outsiders as people without any status at all. How dare you! The guard called out, and immediately, powerful presences rose up within the city walls. Several dozen guards, also over-gods, surged out and encircled Jian Chen aggressively. Undisguised killing intent filled their eyes. Many of the cultivators near the city gates stopped and looked toward Jian Chen. The outsider cultivators all showed sympathy, while the people of the Darkstar race watched on like they were watching a show. Some of them even showed disdain. Brother, you can't afford to come into conflict with the Darkstar race, or you'll be dead for sure. No one will be able to save you. Just hand over your space ring right now and say a few good words. You have to learn to act a little more submissively, or it'll be very difficult for you to get out of this. An old voice rang out in Jian Chen's head. Even without using the senses of his soul, Jian Chen knew the person who had spoken to him was an old man behind him. He was a peak over god who currently stood in the distance, afraid to make his way over. Clearly, he feared the Darkstar race very much. Senior, calm down. You can't afford to fall out with the Darkstar race. Fellow cultivator, the Darkstar race is currently under the control of the 7th Hall Master. The 7th Hall Master already has prejudice towards people from the Saints' world, so at a time like this, you can't afford to clash with the Darkstar race. Even peak god kings will only end up dead like that. A few other voices rang out in Jian Chen's head after the old man, advising him to remain calm. Jian Chen sighed deeply. The secret messages from the surrounding cultivators gave him an even better understanding of the situation that the cultivators of the Saints' world were in. This was no longer just without any status. This was basically a place of misery where they had to act in a servile manner, essentially kneeling and begging for their survival. Even god kings would be no different from common people. So be it, so be it. Jian Chen took off his space ring and tossed it over. The space ring held the remains of 6 over-god life-devouring beasts and an early god king life-devouring beast. He was currently disguised as a mid-god king, so it made sense that he could kill an early god king life-devouring beast. It did not draw any unwarranted attention at all. The guard took Jian Chen's space ring and immediately searched it with the senses of his soul. When he discovered the remains, he became overjoyed. There's actually 7 life-devouring beasts, and even the weakest is at over-god. There's even a life-devouring beast that's reached God King at the very least. Heavens, there's actually a God King life-devouring beast. The remains of such a high-level life-devouring beast usually only appears in the capital city. It's been several hundred years since our Dark Knight city's seen the remains of a God King life-devouring beast. The guard's eyes lit up completely. In particular, his eyes became green with greed when he saw the God King life-devouring beasts. With his reaction witnessed by the several dozen over-god guards in the surroundings, they all beamed as well with a hint of eagerness. Miao Wei, how's it? An over-god guard could not help but ask. These people had known each other for several centuries now. This was the first time he had seen Miao Wei react like that. The senses of Miao Wei's soul retreated from the space ring rather reluctantly. He was overjoyed as he said excitedly, "It's a big harvest I say. It's equivalent to several hundred years of our salary, or maybe even over a millennium's worth." Really? Fantastic. The guards around Jian Chen were all excited as well, as if they had just struck gold. They could not be more happy. Jian Chen sneered inside when he saw the guard's expressions. He said to the guard called Miao Wei, "You've checked it, so can I have my space ring back now?" Miao Wei calmed himself down and glanced at Jian Chen, before taking out a beast's tail from the space ring and tossing it to him. "Take it. All right, you can enter now." As he said that, he stowed the space ring away like it was his. He had no plan to return it to Jian Chen. Jian Chen looked at the over-god life-devouring beast's tail and smiled. He smiled very brilliantly. There's a total of 7 life-devouring beasts. 6 of them are over God, while 1 is at early God King. They're so precious, yet I'm left with just a tail just from entering the city. Ha 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 ha, this is hilarious. Upon hearing Jian Chen announce his possessions, the outsider cultivators shook their heads as they sighed. They were extremely sympathetic to what Jian Chen had gone through. Only an extremely few number of people were furious, but they did nothing. What are you laughing dumbly for? Hurry up and get in the city. Do you really think you're a big deal just because you're a God King? In the eyes of our Darkstar race, you outsider God Kings are nothing. You're just a slightly stronger ant at most. We've already showed you kindness by leaving a tail for you. If you piss us off, we'll hang your head on the city wall tomorrow, Miao Wei cursed haughtily while pointing at Jian Chen's face. He showed no respect at all. At the same time, 3 figures silently appeared on the city walls that stood several dozen meters tall. They stood on the gate tower with their arms behind their backs as they looked down expressionlessly. Their eyes were extremely cold. 3 powerful presences expanded from their bodies and locked onto Jian Chen firmly. These 3 people were all God Kings. They were God Kings of the Darkstar race. Chapter 27:16, Handling the situation with composure. He's actually a mid-God King and he even managed to kill an early God King life-devouring beast. He's not weak. On the city walls, the God King in the center of the 3 people said. The life-devouring beasts in the 2 world mountains were created from the residual power from the great sovereign of the wood spirits from countless years ago. These beasts are extremely difficult to deal with. They can automatically devour the life force of all cultivators weaker than them within a certain radius. Even those with similar cultivations to the life-devouring beasts will be affected to some degree. At the same time, the life-devouring beasts possess terrifying life force. Their wounds heal at an unbelievable rate, which is why basically all outside cultivators flee when they come across one at the same level of cultivation. Even if their cultivation is slightly higher than the life-devouring beasts, it's still extremely difficult for them to kill the beast. Since this person can kill an early God King life-devouring beast, his battle prowess should be very great. He may not be invincible among his level of cultivation, but it'll definitely be difficult for him to meet his match, the Darkstar race God King to the left said as he stared at Jian Chen. He did not show any particular emotion. There was no fear at all. The 3 of us are all early God Kings. It seems like if the person below makes trouble, we won't be his opponent even if we work together, the 3rd God King had spoken as well. He did say that the 3 of them could not defeat Jian Chen even if they worked together, but he was sneering when he said that. He did not take Jian Chen seriously either. So what if we can't beat him? This is our city. There's plenty of God Kings in the city. As long as the battle happens here, a large number of God Kings will immediately rush over from within the city. When that happens, even peak God Kings will be doomed, let alone a mid-God King, said the God King in the center. Yeah. Let's just see whether this person does anything. Though, I do hope he does, because we'll then be able to work with the God Kings in the city to kill him. To think that a mid-God Kings actually appeared among these foreigners, it's about time for us to tidy them up. Otherwise, if they break through to Infinite Prime in our world, they'll be difficult to handle. The 3 of them had not been communicating with each other secretly. They were not speaking loudly, but everyone gathered there were godhood cultivators. Let alone a measly range of several hundred meters, everyone thousands, or even tens of thousand meters away could hear them clearly. As a result, no one missed a single word the 3 God Kings had uttered, which immediately changed the expressions of the outsiders. Sir, calm down. You must calm down. Just give them the remains of the life-devouring beasts. Please don't say anything else. Senior, you may be powerful, but this still is the territory of the Darkstar race. Even the powerful cannot neglect the local forces. You can't afford to fight with them over just these worldly possessions. It's not worth it. Sir, this isn't the 100 Saints City. We have to show respect to every single member of the Darkstar race we meet outside of the 100 Saints City. You can't afford to clash with them. Numerous voices rang out in Jian Chen's head once again. Many of the nearby outsiders did their best to persuade him. All of them were extremely fearful of the Darkstar race, unwilling to offend them even in the slightest. Jian Chen struggled to imagine that these people came from large sects and clans of the Saints' world from how fearfully they seemed in general, let alone being afraid of offending anyone. True independent cultivators amounted to only a small fraction among all the cultivators in the world of the fallen beast. Most of them were people with a certain background. However, their background could not rival Jin Hong's group. After all, Jin Hong's group was completely composed of people from organizations with Grand Primes. Some of them even had multiple Grand Primes. The organizations these people were from probably only had chaotic primes or infinite primes. Jian Chen obviously would not just swallow his pride there. His current identity was fake and his strength did not particularly stand out either. With a false identity like this, he was not afraid of anything. He was truly fearless. He suddenly looked at the top of the city walls, at the 3 god kings there. Seems like you're slavering over my belongings. What you said earlier should be directed to me, right? You're implying that I should give up on taking back my items, because once anything else happens, other god kings in the city will come to reinforce you if you 3 aren't my opponent. However, more god kings means more people to share among. Even if the remains end up with you, you'll only receive a small part of it. If you could obtain the remains without drawing any blood and drawing in other people, you will receive a greater share. Am I correct? Jian Chen had an idea in mind when he said that. He was an infinite prime after all. His senses were extremely powerful, so he could clearly sense that while the 3 god kings behaved calmly on the surface when they heard about the remains of a god king life-devouring beast, they were actually very excited inside. Immediately, the surroundings fell silent. Only the dense pressure from the 3 god kings permeated the air, making the atmosphere abnormally heavy. The people who moved through the city gates, whether they were outsiders or members of the Darkstar race, all halted in that moment. They remained a safe distance away and watched on. The 3 god kings on the city walls did not reply immediately. They all stared at Jian Chen coldly. Their gazes were even more terrifying than before, and within it was faint killing intent. That was indeed what they had been thinking, because God King life-devouring beasts was far more tempting than Jian Chen had imagined them to be. Now that Jian Chen had spoken their minds, they were extremely displeased. I'll give you 2 choices. The first choice is taking back your space ring and then dying here today. The second choice is leaving behind the space ring and entering the city with the tail in your hand, and nothing will happen today. You'll be left in one piece, one of the God Kings said coldly a while later. Ha ha ha, I, Gu Qi, am still a mid-God King at the end of the day. How can I just be threatened by you? This space ring belonged to me in the first place, and the life-devouring beasts were slain by me after tremendous effort. Of course I'm taking it back. I'll give you 2 choices right now as well. The first choice is that you can take the space ring from me and at least one of you will die today. Of course. If you are too weak, all of you might end up dead before reinforcements arrive from the city. The second choice would be to turn a blind eye to everything that happened today, and we can continue about what we were doing before. We'll stay out of matters that don't concern us, Jian Chen said with composure. Before he had finished speaking, he waved his hand and the space ring returned to him before Miao Wei could even react. Chapter 27:17, A Storm in Dark Night City. 1. Miao Wei was only an over-god. Despite clutching the space ring, it was impossible for him to keep it from Jian Chen, an infinite prime. He only felt that his hands suddenly become empty. He did not even understand how the space ring was taken away. How dare you steal something from me in public? Are you looking to die? Miao Wei was furious. He yelled at a mid-god king despite being just an over-god, showing no respect at all. That was because he was a member of the Darkstar race, while this world was completely under the Darkstar race's control. As a result, Miao Wei was not the only one who behaved like that. Basically all the people from the Darkstar race showed no respect to these outsiders. It was mine in the first place. I'm just taking back what's mine. Since when did it become yours? You're merely an over-god, yet you're yelling at me. I think you're the one who wants to die, Jianchen said indifferently. He glanced at Miao Wei emotionlessly, and killing intent flooded in his eyes. Suddenly, 3 powerful presence came crashing down. The 3 god kings on the city walls descended. All of their gazes were cold as they surrounded Jianchen in a triangle. One of them said sternly, "I'll give you one last opportunity. Leave the space ring behind and you can leave. It's much easier for you outsiders to kill these life-devouring beasts than us. With your cultivation at mid-god king, it's nothing difficult to kill an early god king life-devouring beast, so why must you lose your life pointlessly over something like this?" The 3 of them still had a final ray of hope that they could persuade Jianchen. Otherwise, once they began fighting and drew over more people, their share would be much smaller even if the space ring ended up with them. You're the ones who'll lose your lives, not me. Jianchen had already run out of patience. His gaze suddenly became freezing as he sneered disdainfully. He cut to the chase. Laws of strength revolved around him as he directly threw a punch at the god king before him. The punch seemed simple, but it possessed the mysteries of the laws of strength, so the strength in the punch was astonishing. Even the air exploded with the punch, producing a deep boom like thunder. The 3 god kings had been prepared a long time ago, because as soon as they left the city walls, they were poised to fight at any time. As a result, as soon as Jianchen launched an attack, sets of armor appeared on all 3 of them. The armor were all high-quality saint artifacts. How impudent. We'll kill you under the city gates today and hang your head high on the city walls for the next 10,000 years, the god king in front of Jianchen yelled out. A huge high-quality saint artifact axe landed on Jianchen's fist. The axe surged with light, giving off powerful pulses of energy. Boom! Jianchen's fist struck the axe with unimaginably terrifying force. Afterwards, something that shocked all the spectators happened. The axe actually crumbled like fragile pottery. It actually shattered under Jianchen's punch after an explosion. Jianchen's punch continued onwards and shattered the armor on the god king like it was unstoppable. The overwhelming force directly blew up the entire body of the god king, leaving only his head intact. The god king's face was filled with fear. He originally thought that with 3 people working together, they could match a mid-god king even if they could not defeat one. However, he had never thought Jianchen would be even more powerful than he imagined him to be, such that a single punch from Jianchen would be unstoppable. Stop, don't kill me. Don't kill me. Now that he truly faced death, he began to experience fear. He pleaded for his life secretly in great horror. With a punch, just a single punch, Jianchen had destroyed an early god king. The strength he had displayed made the spectators near the city gates breathless. All of them were filled with shock. Jianchen ignored the god king's pleas. The Darkstar race's harassing and arrogant behavior had made him want to kill them. With a shudder of his hand, laws of strength immediately emerged as a visible ripple that expanded through the air, directly shaking the god king's head to pieces and destroying his soul. At the same time, the residual power from the laws of strength continued towards the city walls. Under the terrifying force, the several dozen over-god guards near the city gates were all blown away as blood spurted from their mouths. The entire city wall began to tremble violently. In the next moment, cracks actually appeared on the city walls that had stood for who knew how long. If it were not for the rather great power protecting the city walls, they would have been reduced to ruins under the ripples of battle a long time ago. Everything happened extremely quickly. From the moment when Jianchen struck out to when the God King had died, only a split second had passed. By then, the attacks from the 2 other God Kings had only just approached Jianchen. Jianchen did not use any fancy tricks. He turned around and punched twice. It was very straightforward. The punches were extremely tough, possessing extremely condensed laws of strength. He destroyed the 2 other high-quality saint artifacts effortlessly again. The 2 God Kings were completely at a loss as they looked at the destroyed saint artifacts in their hands. They knew exactly how tough high-quality saint artifacts were. Let alone mid-god kings, even late god kings would struggle to destroy them. Only supreme peak god kings that could be regarded among the very best could achieve that. With this, didn't it mean that the outsider they had encountered was actually no weaker than a peak god king, even on par to some of the strongest figures among peak god king? Upon realizing that, the two god kings could not be more shocked. They retreated without any hesitation and called out at the same time, requesting reinforcements. They were no longer thinking about the remains of the life-devouring beasts now that they faced such a powerful opponent. Instead, they were considering for their personal safety. It was difficult to keep a clash between god kings hidden. The disturbances would reach extremely far away. The disturbance from the battle immediately spread across the entire city, causing all of the god kings in the city to sense the situation at the entrance. Immediately, a large swathe of senses of souls came flooding over. Yes, it was a large swathe, because there were just too many senses of the soul. All of them were at God King. There were at least 1,000 people. Jian Shen did not find it strange at all that Dark Knight City possessed so many god kings. He had actually enveloped the entire city with his senses and discovered just how many god kings there were, outnumbering any peak organization from the Saints' world by many to one, or even several dozen to one. After all, this was a sealed world that was controlled by a single race, so rarely did conflict occur. At the same time, the strongest was only Infinite Prime, so over the years, many cultivators would become stuck at God King. The God Kings of the Darkstar race were definitely all older than any God King from the Saints' world. There were many God Kings who had lived for millions of years. There were even ones who had lived for tens of millions of years. After all, it was extremely difficult to break through to the primordial realm in an environment like the Darkstar world. Unless they possessed supreme talent, unless they were figures of unprecedented fortune, they could not cross the gates leading to the primordial realm. How dare you! An outsider has come to our Dark Knight City to kill our people. He deserves 1,000 deaths. You've actually killed a God King of our Darkstar race. You cannot be any more reckless than that, to think that a mid-God King actually possesses such battle prowess. That's impressive. We have to kill him today, or he'll become quite a problem for us in the future. Chapter 27:18, A Storm in Dark Knight City, 2. A series of furious roars rang out from the Dark Knight City. Afterwards, powerful presences erupted from multiple locations in the city. The pulses of energies from several dozen or maybe even over 100 God Kings shook up the surroundings, such that a storm immediately began brewing in the ancient city that had been enjoyed peace for so long. In the next moment, over 100 God Kings of the Darkstar race flew over. They moved with lightning speed as every single one of them was furious and teeming with killing intent, flying towards the city gates. This place belonged to their Darkstar race, not to mention that it was a city. They were used to how submissively the outsiders behaved here. Now that someone had suddenly behaved in such an arrogant manner, it was beyond what they could allow. When the spectating outsiders saw how the situation had developed near the city gates, they all became extremely stern. Oh no, it's developed out of control. Let's go, let's go. Let's leave here quickly, or the God Kings from the Darkstar race will turn to us to vent their anger. Yeah, let's go quickly, or we might get dragged into this. The nearby outsiders communicated with each other secretly. All of them were extremely nervous. No one dared to remain there any longer, all leaving as quickly as they could. In the blink of an eye, all of the outsiders had vanished from the city gates, leaving only Jian Shen standing there fearlessly and alone. Facing an encirclement of over 100 God Kings, he remained as composed as ever. Our reinforcements are here. You're dead for sure. Let alone a mid-God King like you, even a peak God King would be done for today. Once you die, I'll cut off your head and hang it on the city walls. You cannot be a greater fool for losing your life over a life-devouring beast. Though, it's too late for you to do anything now. The two God Kings who watched over the city gates gnashed their teeth behind Jian Shen. They looked at Jian Shen venomously and furiously. Not only did the two of them fail to benefit from the situation at all, Jian Shen had even managed to shatter their high-quality saint artifacts. The losses was enough for their hearts to bleed in agony. I'm supposed to be doomed just because of these people? That'll be difficult to achieve. As for taking my head, probably even your Supreme Darkstar Emperor can't achieve that, Jian Shen said easily and with composure. He did not let his voice spread, so only the two God Kings heard that. The two God Kings both sneered in response to Jian Shen. They had seen many arrogant people, but they had never seen an outsider as arrogant as him. Let alone seeing one, they had not even heard of one like him before. He was just a measly mid-God king. Even if his battle prowess could rival late God Kings, did he really think he was so great that even the Darkstar Emperor could not kill him? Just when the two of them wanted to retort him, a huge axe appeared in Jian Shen's hand. Jian Shen was unable to bring any god artifacts with him on his trip to the world of the fallen beast this time, but he did bring a few saint artifacts. Coupled with the many space rings he had collected from the corpses of sacrificial soldiers, he carried quite a few supreme quality saint artifacts and high quality saint artifacts on him currently. Jian Shen wielded the axe with both hands. The huge axe was the size of a shield, matching his disguise as a burly man. As the laws of strength revolved around him, he suddenly swung the huge axe and even left a white mark on the space there. This time, he directly attacked to kill. With his cultivation and comprehension at mid-God King, combined with a sliver of physical strength from his chaotic body, his swing of the axe had reached the limits of God King, only just below the primordial realm. If he only used cultivation and comprehension at mid-God King, he would not have been as terrifying, but if it was combined with the physical strength from the chaotic body, even if it was just a tiny sliver, his attacks would become extremely terrifying among God Kings. Spurt. Spurt. The tremendous pressure firmly immobilized the two God Kings. Before Jian Shen's axe, they could not dodge at all, let alone fight back. There was a splash of red and their heads had been chopped off by the axe. The explosive power in the axe crushed their souls like dry leaves. My comprehension of the laws of strength has actually increased slightly. After killing the two of them, Jian Shen's eyes lit up. His legacy of the laws of strength came from one of the 8 experts sealed underground on the desolate plain. The golden core of laws purely condensed from the laws of strength still resided in his soul. Once he completely absorbed the golden core of laws, it was extremely likely that his comprehension of the laws of strength would reach the primordial realm. However, just earlier when he used his laws of strength that had only been comprehended up to mid-God King, he could clearly feel that he had absorbed a tiny sliver of the golden core of laws. Does fighting with my full strength using the laws of strength increase my comprehension of it? Jian Shen thought. He instinctively glanced at the axe in his hands and his transformed figure. He seemed to understand something. Is that so? The saint artifact I'm using right now and my stature is most suitable for unleashing the laws of strength. They are highly compatible with the laws of strength, which allows me to comprehend the laws of strength with much greater ease. Although I also used the laws of strength to fight in the past, that was in a different state, which was why I didn't sense something like this, Jian Shen thought. You're looking to die. A furious bellow rang out in the sky. Several dozen God Kings of the Darkstar race had already arrived above the walls. Every single one of them surged with power and killing intent as their pressure flooded the surroundings. Clad in armor, they launched attacks from afar using the high-quality or supreme-quality saint artifacts in their hands. The sky lit up. Sword chi, blade chi, spears of light and various other energy attacks rained down like a storm, all targeting Jian Shen. At the same time, the sky gave off a pressure that originated from the world as a powerful energy charged up. A God King of the Darkstar race was using a battle skill. Jian Shen kicked the ground and a great force made it shake violently. Afterwards, a huge piece of earth around 300 meters across flew up from the ground. All of the powerful attacks landed on this flying piece of earth, shattering it to pieces and filling the air with dust. Jian Shen took advantage of this to fly forwards and dodge all the attacks with great agility, appearing below all the God Kings. Afterwards, he shot off into the air like a cannonball with the huge axe in hand, immediately appearing beside a mid-God King. Wielding the axe with both hands, he erupted with the laws of strength and swung down. Spurt. Jian Shen attacked with lightning speed. The power in the axe was utterly terrifying. With a swing, he chopped through the mid-god king's high-quality saint artifact armor, through the various obstacles until he was bisected. After the axe had passed through his body, a sliver of the laws of strength remained behind, not only turning his body to mush, but also shaking his soul to pieces. In just a single stroke, a mid-god king had died. The death of a mid-god king posed as a heavy psychological blow to the members of the Darkstar race. It was much more shocking than the deaths of the 3 early god kings, which had stunned many of the god kings. They hesitated as a result as they instinctively took a step back. After all, killing an early god king with a single strike was completely different from killing a mid-god king with a single strike. What are you afraid of? He's alone. Are we supposed to be afraid of him with so many of us? Everyone get him together. He's so powerful, so we can't let him live. Once we kill him, the 7th Hall Master will definitely rewards us, a mid-god king from the Darkstar race called out from the crowd. Chapter 27:19, A Storm in Dark Night City, 3. As soon as they heard about a reward from the 7th Hall Master, the eyes of many Darkstar race god kings lit up. They knew the 7th Hall Master disliked the outside cultivators. He was the one who hated the outsiders the most among the 10 Hall Masters of the entire Darkstar race. If it were not for the fact that the Darkstar Emperor and some other Hall Masters allowed the existence of these outsiders and that their Darkstar world still needed to trade with these outsiders to obtain some resources from the Saints' world, the 7th Hall Master probably would have massacred all the outsiders in the Darkstar world already. Although the upper echelon of the Darkstar race allowed the outsiders here, that was under one condition, that the outsiders could not be too powerful. If they were just early god kings, the Darkstar race would not care. However, once mid-god kings began appearing among the outsiders, the Darkstar race would begin taking them seriously. Late god kings would become targets that the Darkstar race had to kill. Regardless of being independent cultivators or coming from a large organization, the Darkstar race could not allow the existence of any late god kings. This was because the suppression from the laws in the Darkstar world was nowhere as great on the outsiders compared to the Darkstar race. As a result, it was much easier for outsiders to break through to the primordial realm than members of the Darkstar race. Who knew when an outsider late god king would reach the primordial realm? Once primordial realm experts began appearing among the outsiders, they would pose a great threat to the Darkstar race. The Darkstar race could not allow even the slightest chance for this to happen. The upper echelon of the Darkstar race all agreed to kill all outsider late god kings they came across without mercy, regardless of the consequences. Although the cultivation that Jian Shen displayed was not at late god king, he was far more terrifying than any late god king in the eyes of the god kings of the Darkstar race. He possessed battle prowess no weaker than late god kings despite being a mid-god king. Once he did break through to late god king, wouldn't that mean that basically no one below the primordial realm could deal with him? Someone like that was just too terrifying. 8 god kings around Jian Shen took action. They were all mid-god kings and had already agreed on the method to deal with Jian Shen secretly. As soon as they moved, they fell into a killing formation. The power of their souls surged out violently, interlinking and creating a formation composed purely of the power of their souls. They created the formation extremely quickly, completing it in a split second. They were so fast that even late god kings would not be able to react in time. The power of their souls wove together and formed a mental cage in the air which suddenly fell down, trapping Jian Shen's soul. Jian Shen only felt the landscape around him change. In the next moment, the Dark Night City and all the god kings around him vanished. Jian Shen only felt like he had arrived in a world of darkness. It was utterly pitch black. In that moment, his soul seemed to be trapped there, not only minimizing his senses of the outside world, but also gradually weakening his control over his body. This formation can actually trap the soul. Once the soul's completely trapped, it can be separated from the body. If I don't put up any resistance, I'll be utterly helpless. I never thought the Darkstar race would possess such a strange formation, Jian frowned as he raised his guard a little. He obviously was not afraid of a formation powered by God Kings. It was impossible to trap his soul, which had reached the primordial realm. However, if it involved multiple infinite primes, Jian had no confidence in being able to oppose it. Seems like I need to be a little careful with the infinite primes of the Dark Star race I face in the future. At the very least, I need to guard myself against this formation, Jian thought. He was in no hurry to burst out of the formation. Instead, he closely inspected the wonders of the formation, to avoid suffering too heavily at the hands of infinite primes in the future. Jian eyes shone brightly, emitting streaks of visible light. He had pushed the power of his soul to the limit, allowing him to fuse with the world and merge with the laws, peering into the formation to the best of his ability. Having reached the primordial realm, his comprehension of the laws of the world had attained a certain level. Although it was nowhere close to grand primes, or grand exalts who could peer into the deepest secrets of the world, he could still derive some rough information by doing this. This is the meteor soul-destroying formation. They've actually grasped this supreme secret technique, the meteor soul-destroying formation. This is a supreme secret technique that the ancestors have passed down through the ages. There's less than 1% of our entire race that can grasp the meteor soul-destroying formation. He's been trapped by the meteor soul-destroying formation. His soul's been separated from his body, so he can't sense anything right now. Quick, everyone get him together and kill him, the God Kings of the Dark Star race yelled out at the entrance of the Dark Night City. At the same time, the gazes of the 8 God Kings in the formation suddenly sharpened. They yelled out together, "Die!" As they yelled out, a huge sword condensed purely from the power of souls suddenly appeared, tearing through Jian's external defenses and directly landing on his soul. The attack was so great that even late God Kings would have been heavily injured, much less mid-God Kings. Is this called the meteor soul-destroying formation? It's more like a powerful secret technique than a formation. However, this secret technique is wondrous. Once it's been successfully used, it's basically impossible to defend against. The only method to deal with this is to use a similar attack. I only have 2 attacks, the secret techniques of the martial soul lineage and the profound sword chi, that can deal with this secret technique. When the huge sword slashed down, Jian stopped peering. With a thought, the formation created by the 8 mid-god kinds shattered. Even the huge sword condensed from the power of souls collapsed. With the destruction of the formation, the 8 God Kings suffered a tremendous backlash. They all shuddered and their faces immediately paled, as they began to totter in the air. They almost fell out of the sky. The meteor soul-destroying formation was powerful. It could directly attack the soul regardless of any defenses. However, the formation also had a fatal weakness, which was a tremendous backlash if they underestimated their opponent and used it on someone with a soul much more powerful than their own. It could even lead to harming their own souls. The 8 God Kings were all frightened. They looked at Jian in surprise and fear as their faces were filled with disbelief. Others might not have known what happened earlier, but the 8 of them knew exactly what had happened. They discovered that Jian's soul was unbelievably powerful despite only exhibiting the cultivation of a God King. It had even reached the level that could cause them dread. This was not a soul that a God King should have possessed. Suddenly, the same thought that sent chills down their spine filled all of their heads. However, Jian did not give them the time to think about it. He swung his huge axe 8 times consecutively and killed off all 8 God Kings. Powerful pulses of energy shook up and spread across the entire city. A black star containing highly concentrated power slowly rose up from the city. Afterwards, it turned into a streak of black light that shot towards Jian with the might of the world. The black star had already locked onto Jian's presence when it was launched, so it was impossible for Jian to dodge it. A god-tier battle skill. Jian's heart jumped. With his insight, he could obviously tell what tier the battle skill was at first glance. What surprised him was the fact that he had come across a god-tier battle skill wielding God King so easily. No one could remain hidden under the senses of Jian's soul within Dark Night City. Under Jian Chen's observations, this person did not even belong to the strongest group of people present in the city. There were not a lot of god kings who could use god-tier battle skills in the saints' world. Every single one who could possessed great talent and were deviants. There was only a handful of them. Yet, in the Dark Star world, just any old god king Jian Chen had come across could use a god-tier battle skill, which surprised him to some degree. This person's probably cultivated for an extremely terrifying amount of time. If you spend a tremendous amount of time comprehending and studying a single god-tier battle skill, it shouldn't be too difficult to comprehend the battle skill as long as it's not too profound even with slightly worse talent, Jian Chen thought. He discovered that maybe he needed to re-evaluate the strength of the Dark Star race. Not only did the race possess countless god kings, perhaps there were many late god kings among them who had grasped god-tier battle skills as well. If even regular god kings could achieve this, it would go without saying for members of the Dark Star race with monstrous talent who managed to break through to the primordial realm under these circumstances. It seems like I really need to be cautious when I come across infinite primes of the Dark Star race in the future. Perhaps these people are much more difficult to deal with than those from the saints' world. I can't afford to mess up something so simple, Jian Chen thought quickly. He had benefited from his trip to the Dark Knight City. At the very least, he managed to gain a new understanding of the primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race from these god kings. These infinite primes would become his opponents in the future. I can't afford to be reckless among the Dark Star race. The will of the Grand Exalt from the wood spirits may have suppressed them, but from a different perspective, it's also molded them into what they are now. All of these thoughts crossed Jian Chen's head in a single moment. However, Jian Chen's movements did not dull despite all the thinking. His presence surged as powerful battle intent roared. With a swing of his axe, it collided heavily with the incoming black star, producing a deafening rumble. The powerful ripples of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings as a storm. Under such powerful ripples of energy, the walls of the Dark Knight City which had stood for who knew how long finally collapsed under the burden. The storm of energy created from the explosion of the black star directly swallowed Jian Chen's figure, leaving his fate unknown. This king's only recently comprehended the Star of Apocalypse. I'll test the battle skill's power on you today. It'll be your honor to die to the Star of Apocalypse. A cold voice rang out from Dark Knight City once again. At the same time, the City Lord of Dark Knight City, Biyao, currently gathered with the members of Upper Echelon in the majestic City Lord's estate, paying close attention to the battle at the city gates. The Star of Apocalypse. The proud Ice King has spent 7 million years comprehending it. He's finally grasped that god-tier battle skill. With that, he's basically consolidated his position among the 108 kings. An old man beside the city lord stroked his long beard as he sighed emotionally. He was one of the vice city lords of the Dark Knight City, named Si Wuching. With the proud Ice King's strength, he's definitely able to rank within the top 10 of that God King's throne or something from the Saints' world. With his status, he's gone a little overboard to deal with an outsider mid-God King, even using the supreme battle skill, the Star of Apocalypse, on him. Is there any reason why we need to treat a mere outsider like this? Another vice city lord, Shui Sha, said indifferently. This outsider's not simple. He's a mid-God King, yet he possesses strength that has exceeded regular late God Kings. We cannot allow someone like that to grow stronger. Killing him as soon as possible will be ridding a potential future problem, said the third vice city lord. He withdrew his gaze and continued, there's no need to watch anymore. Once the proud Ice Kings used his Star of Apocalypse, the outsider's fate has basically been decided. Let's continue with the Emperor's mission. We have to convert this droplet of a divine beast's essence blood as quickly as possible. If we take too long, we'll delay the great ceremony. The city lord remained silent the entire time. After hearing that, he immediately showed great care. Laying out his hand, a droplet of blood appeared out of nowhere, hovering the center of his hand. The power of bloodline hidden in this droplet of essence blood is extremely great. Even though it's just a single droplet, it's taken us several years to refine it even after combining the strength of the 36 lords and 108 kings of our Dark Knight City, and we still haven't completely converted it. I really wonder what species this divine beast is for it to be so powerful. The city lord, Biyao, sighed in surprise as he stared at the droplet of essence blood in his hand. The breakthrough doesn't necessarily demonstrate anything. Going from peak over god to god king only takes a step after all, said the vice city lord Shueisha. Although breaking through in the Dark Star world was slightly more difficult than outside, it was still much easier for outsiders compared to members of the Dark Star race. There were many outsiders who could break through overnight, so there was nothing special about this. Biyao glanced at him, correct. If it was only a single breakthrough, it would have meant nothing. However, in just a year after becoming a God King, he broke through again, reaching mid-God King from early God King in a single stroke. What? He went from early God King to mid-God King in just a year? Just a year. In just a short year, he broke through again. That's just unbelievable. The surrounding vice city lords and members of the upper echelon were all in disbelief once Biyao had said that. Every single step after reaching God King was extremely difficult for them. I heard the divine beast's not a mid-God King, but a late God King, an important member of the Dark Knight City added softly. Late God King? Did the divine beast break through again after reaching mid-God King? In that moment, everyone became stunned. Although these people knew about the existence of the divine beast, many of them were not familiar with the exact details. As the city lord of the Dark Knight City, Biyao obviously possessed some status within the Dark Star race, so he had access to much more information. He continued, once outsiders reach mid-God King, we will do everything we can to exterminate them. As a result, after the divine beast left the 100 Saints City, our clansmen took action against him. It was said that over a dozen God Kings were mobilized, including 1 late God King and 5 mid-God Kings. Logically speaking, such a powerful group should have been more than enough to finish off a mid-God King who had only broken through recently. But in the end, the exact opposite happened. All of the God Kings we sent, including the late God King, were slain by the divine beast. The God Kings that died all came from the Flying Phoenix City. A vice city lord of the Flying Phoenix City was furious, so he personally led a group of experts to hunt down the divine beast. In the end, he lost over a dozen of the God Kings he had brought with him, but failed to capture the divine beast, allowing the divine beast to flee into the depths of the Two World Mountains. The Two World Mountains is a forbidden zone for our race. None of us will ever set foot in there unless we have no other choice, much less set foot in the depths that are even more terrifying. Unless the people of our race have reached the primordial realm, basically everyone is doomed if they set foot in the depths of the Two World Mountains. As a result, the Flying Phoenix City could only give up on hunting him down after the divine beast managed to flee.